All right. I am joined by Sam Seder, um, who is Hugo on Bob's Burgers, and may also, some people may be aware, hosts a show called The Majority Report. How you doing, Sam?
I tried to. In the Hugo voice.
Fair enough. So I know you've got got relatively limited time today. I should say that so we've got a little preview that the people at This Is Revolution put together for the live show going on in LA in about a week and a half, not even that. So
that's exciting. I wish I could go. I wish I could go.
Yeah, well, you had very generously agreed to do the one in New York when we thought we were doing that in early November. I think the wheels are going to take a little bit longer to turn on that.
Yeah.
But very soon, I hope we can do one. We can do one in New York. We're also joined by RM Vance. How you doing?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. So RM and I in a few minutes are going to watch this debate that just happened, the Senate debate in Ohio between RM Brown is actually his name, but JD Vance and Tim Ryan, and I do want to talk about that race in a minute, but first, I mean, just like much more generally, like what's your, like, I feel like several months ago, it seemed like the midterms were going to be a massacre for like all kinds of obvious reasons, they have to do with, inflation and Biden not being able, to do for various reasons, not doing a lot of what he's, he said he would do it, etc. And now it seems like maybe not completely. I mean, what's your sense?
Well, and the other reason for that is just that historically, it is the case that the party in power loses seats. The party who holds the presidency loses seats. I mean, I've been pretty optimistic that the Democrats will hold the Senate for a while, and I'm not really seeing anything that would make me change my mind on that. I mean, I think if things go very well for the Democrats, I think they'll pick up 2 seats. I think if things go okay, I think they're going to retain the Senate. I look around at the races. I'm in Nevada right now. I'm in Las Vegas for a conference, and I think this is the best chance for a pickup by the Republicans in the country, I would guess. They're just flooding the airwaves with money. There's a tremendous amount of money that the Republicans raised, and they're going to just dump it in the next, 3 weeks. But I think Fetterman's going to win. That's going to be a pickup for Democrats. I think in New Hampshire, I don't think Bolduc is going to win, so I think that's going to stay in the Democratic column. I think Colorado was looking maybe, but I don't, problematic for the Democrats, but I think it's going to stay good for them. I think Mark Kelly is going to beat Blake Masters in Arizona. I don't know if you just saw that Peter Thiel basically made an offer to McConnell's Republican PAC. I'll dump in $15 million if you dump in $15 million. And McConnell said, pass. And so Thiel is going to dump in $15 million anyways. I don't think that's going to ultimately prove decisive. I think it's, people already know Kelly on some level. And I think it's harder, for like a late surge to hurt an incumbent. I just saw Blake Masters. We watched a clip today on the show of Blake Masters on Fox, and seemingly he's getting a lot of like tough questions about why he removed from his website the claim that the 2020 election was stolen.
Yeah.
And it appeared as if he was taking, he's getting some hard questions, but I really do think that they actually brought him on there to reiterate that he still believes the election was stolen.
Just in case anybody thought he'd wavered.
Well, honestly, I think he felt like he had to shore up his lunatic base. And so I found that encouraging. And then, Democrats have I think Wisconsin looks a little tricky. But who knows? But I think Wisconsin's going to be tough. Florida, I think, is unlikely, but it's not inconceivable the Democrats could win there. North Carolina, that could be a pickup. And so, I think at the end of this, you're going to see Democrats with 50 to 52 seats, maybe even Iowa, but I think 50 to 52 seats. I think the House is much harder to do. There's a lot less, seats that the Democrats even have a chance to win, insofar as the number of districts, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's down to maybe 21 that, have a Democrat and voted for Trump type of situation, or vice versa. And I suspect the Democrats are gonna lose anywhere from 5 to 15 seats, or have a 5 to 15. The Republicans at the end of the night could end up with a 5 to 15 seat majority. But I have a great caller on my show, John from San Antonio. Ben, maybe you've heard him in the past, but he makes the argument that the generic ballot has been very telling in these instances, and Democrats are doing okay in the generic ballots. And I really do have questions as to how accurate are the polls? It's hard to know, but and then Georgia, I think I still think it's unlikely that Herschel Walker is going to win, but they're dumping so much money in there, and I think they're doing it because Kemp has a growing lead over Abrams, and I think they must think that maybe there's a chance, because there's going to be so many people pulling the lever for Kemp, and that maybe they can get them to vote for Walker. But my contention is also that Walker abortion stuff, it's not going to damage him insofar as that he's paid for an abortion. I don't think it's going to damage him with his voters. I think what it does is it keeps reminding Democratic voters and voters who care about a right to choose an abortion to come out and vote against him.
Well, I will say I live in Atlanta, and the Democrats are certainly trying that. I get every time I go check the mailbox, it's full of little mailers, about that are always about that. So that makes sense. I mean, it is. I guess. I mean, Walker is. I don't know. I mean, he's he's such a ridiculous person, but I mean, obviously that doesn't disqualify you from anything. But I have, I mean, I think he could win. I don't know. But the Masters thing is encouraging, because I actually just read this book by Max Shafkin, The Contrarian, about Peter Thiel, and it's really dizzying, because Masters' name is all over that book because he was Thiel's he
CFO or something. I can't remember exactly what his job was.
Yeah, he was a CFO, and I think I think he might have been the head of Thiel's foundation for a while. He certainly had some sort of role in Founders Fund, and also he basically wrote his book for him, the 0 to 1, that was like adapted from Thiel's lectures, but I mean, like he basically turned that into the book. And so it's just weird. And I mean, this also brings us to Vance, because like both of these guys, right, are entirely creatures of like Peter. I mean, Masters more than Vance, but I mean Vance to a very great extent. I mean, just creatures of Peter Thiel's largesse, and both of them are running as like populists who care about the ordinary people who've been forgotten and deindustrialization and all that stuff. And the disconnect between those, like it's really hard for me to see how like anybody isn't
falls for that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, Ohio is a reddish state, and most people don't know the background of these guys. But when you watch the debate, I haven't seen it, but I think Ryan, in the last poll I saw, they were pretty tied, Ryan is not my first choice of who I would like to be in the Senate, but at the end of the day, judges. The Biden administration is year to date, or I should say term to date, right? 2 years, tied with how many judges Trump put in, which is an extraordinary feat, because there was a lot more vacancies that Obama had left him than Trump left Biden. And I think that's just, and these are lifetime appointment judges, federal judges. I don't think it can be overstated, the importance of filling, of maintaining that pace over the next 2 years, which will absolutely end if McConnell becomes the leader. Now, of course, the left and the Democratic Party don't pay attention to those things in the way that the right does. Right. And so nobody's campaigning on that, but that to me seems to be the biggest issue in this election. But Ryan seems to be running a Sherrod Brown inspired campaign. And the one thing I heard about that debate was, I don't know, spoiler alert, is it going to be a problem if I say the one thing I heard about it was that
probably, we'll pretend to be surprised.
Okay, well, it was some type of like, there's a machismo moment, let's put it that way. And I think there is, I think the demo that Ryan needs to appeal to is going to sort of like that. But I think, Ryan's out there talking about, sort of like Sherrod Brown style issues. I don't know if Sherrod Brown could win for the first time in today's Ohio. But we'll see. It's not inconceivable. I mean, J.D. Vance is a bad candidate. And
yeah, he is. I wrote something several months back. I guess it was like whenever he first clinched the nomination for the Daily Beast, called the unbelievably phony populism of J.D. Vance, where I kind of went through like all of his like really vague rhetoric on his campaign website about deindustrialization and the opioid crisis and all that, and then like compared it to his actual positions about everything, which are really easy to find, because there's this document that was was intended to be privately for the campaign, that it was like their like oppo, like this is our analysis of our candidates' vulnerabilities document. But the reason that it got out is that because, I mean, they even during the primary they had other donors, but it was like mostly Thiel, and he was and so he funded them much more than he could obviously legally do it just as an individual. So he did what you do. He did it through Super PAC, and then so there's a lot of stuff, but because they were so reliant during the primary on that Super PAC, there's a lot of stuff that would normally be done in-house during the campaign, like preparing that analysis of vulnerabilities, that they had to do through the super PAC. And since even though the law that you're not supposed to coordinate between the campaign and the super PAC is kind of a bad joke, but you really would get into trouble if you were just constantly sending back and forth private emails, between the organizations. They couldn't do that. So what they did is they set up this like Medium site it was just like a Dropbox link with all these documents, and tried to set it up in a way that it wouldn't really show up in searches. And so there's public Dropbox, which anybody who, once it got out, anybody could access, that had this 100-page document about all of Vance's vulnerabilities. And so you could just kind of go through that, be like, yeah, that opioid crisis foundation they'd set up didn't actually disperse any money to anybody. And he, he worked for this like white shoe law firm that actually represented opioid manufacturers, and and he's against giving anybody health care, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Another spoiler alert, though, Tim Ryan brings that stuff up in the debate, right? So he must have had some access to that Dropbox.
I would hope so. Yeah. I mean, I'd say to J.D. Vance's credit, it's surprising that he didn't finance the opioid crisis based on his work. But yeah, I mean, so I think the outlook for and look, the Dobbs thing was huge, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's activating the key constituency that I think won in 2018 for the Democrats when they came out. I mean, it's all turnout. And in 2018, Republicans had a record turnout. It's just that Democrats had an even greater record turnout. Right. Yep. And it really is going to come down to like how energized people are, I think relative to the Dobbs decision. But I also think that like, in the past, I don't think people are going out going like, Biden was able to land the Inflation Reduction Act. But in doing that, he avoided like the huge narrative of they can't get anything done.
Right.
And that did not develop. And then insufficient, but still welcome, $10,000 to $20,000 of student debt reduction. Mm-hmm. I think that's got people jazzed, or at the very least, it's not going to be a source of suppressing enthusiasm. And same with pot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the pot one is like a little bit more underwhelming than the student loan one when you look into it. That because it doesn't let it out, because there was nobody actually in federal prison for simple possession at the point that it came through. But like, still,
doesn't it expunge records though?
Yeah, I mean, it helps. It helps people who've gotten out to like get access to various federal, services and employment and stuff like that they wouldn't have been able to get. So I mean, it's not nothing. It does help people.
But the big thing for me is he started the process of rescheduling cannabis. I mean, that's the big thing. And at the end of the day, I mean, the pardon's got more of a headline, but it is. They have made what that does is saying that nobody should be in jail for possessing marijuana on a federal level. Well, then how do you justify anybody going to jail next week or in a month or 2 months? You can't. So I think that basically is putting the rescheduling on a path of, at the very least, decriminalized on a federal level. And that's going to have, huge implications for research. And
Yeah, and it's incredibly popular. I mean, like there are some polls where like 55% of Republicans support full federal legalization, never mind Democrats and independents. So yeah, no, I think that's all true. I would also say like, I mean, I think that, as bad as as big parts of the Biden record the first 2 years were in many ways, right? I mean, which I guess is good for me because it keeps me with stuff to write about for Jacobin. But it's also you talked about the courts earlier, and I mean I certainly agree with that. I mean, I think that Supreme Court's obviously done all kinds of horrifying things lately, and will continue to do so, obviously. But like the other thing that back in 2020, I would talk to people. I did a couple of debates about this, about why, I don't believe in scolding people who, make different calculations, but I mean, like I live in Georgia. It's a swing state. I voted for Biden. And one of the reasons, the main reasons I always said, is it's not so much because, I necessarily believe the most melodramatic things that people would say about what would happen as a result of the election, one way or the other, but it's the National Labor Relations Board, which is huge. I mean, if you look back at the record of the Trump NLRB and the kinds of decisions they were making, I mean, and then imagine this wave of the Starbucks unionizations and all that happening with all of those hardcore union busters that Trump put on the NLRB being there. I mean, that would be a disaster.
Oh, and I would even carry it even further. We spoke to one of the leaders of the independent Amazon union that formed in Staten Island, and it was as simple as the National Labor Relations Board appointed attorney saying, we find that you can organize on company property, and they said that was crucial to them forming their union. And in fact, just the other day, the Labor Department is starting the process of issuing a rule, hopefully, to reclassify like janitors and home care workers and some members of the gig economy and drivers as employees. And that means more people, will be able to get Social Security. They'll get a lot more protections from labor. There's a lot of good things. I mean, and I think, much of what we're seeing, frankly, I think, from, the Labor Department comes from, Bernie's campaign and literally their relationship. I mean, I think that if the Democrats had lost the Senate, I mean, I don't know what would have happened, but I think like Bernie had influence with Biden on that Labor Department. I think we see it there. I think we see Warren's influence on antitrust, which has also been another thing that is really good. We're starting to see really vigorous antitrust and the implications of that will last beyond, will last beyond even this administration, because you're putting people into the civil service, unless of course like Trump or DeSantis get elected and push through that last I can't remember what the provision was that he instituted, but it would strip the civil service. But for now, we're staffing up these departments with people who have in antitrust a different perspective than has been dominating this country for 40 years, since that we took the turn in the Borkian assessment of what constitutes antitrust. We're watching a reinvigorated Labor Department. These are all good things. I mean, that's the thing, is that like I've never been a fan of Joe Biden's, but you're not voting. You're not just voting for Joe Biden. You're voting for the literally thousands, tens of thousands of people who are going to staff these positions and who are going to make these decisions. And the fact is that Bernie has Joe Biden's ear. Warren has Joe Biden's ear. And the people who have their ears are also people that we would prefer to the people that would have Donald Trump's ear or DeSantis's ear or whatever it is. And so, from my perspective, I do believe in scolding people when they make an assessment that I would think is different from mine. Sam, I think
coming out with a brave pro-scolding stance.
I without a doubt, no hesitation, unequivocal pro-scolding stance. But I mean, I think that like I think there were strategic errors that the Biden administration did. I think like and I said this at the time, they should have, 2 weeks after they passed the American Rescue Act, they should have like introduced the Build Back Better bill and not given time, not invited Republicans in, not invited the second wave with Portman and Sinema. I mean, all that stuff was a huge tactical and strategic mistake, I think.
Well, I mean, I think when it was split off in the first place, I remember having this sinking feeling that like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, but remember the sequencing of how that happened. First, he said, I'll talk to the Republicans, and like 10 Republicans went to the White House and they hashed it out and nothing came of it after a couple of weeks. And then Portman and Sinema came in with their that was basically when the dual track started. And I think at that point it was all she wrote, because you didn't have the leverage that you needed to keep it all in one bill. And it also gave time. You remember that audio that came out with Manchin, with the no labels crowd talking about, giving jobs out. I mean, it gives the way that the government works. It's like if you give lobbyists time, if you give industries time to realize like what's in these bills. Oh shit, this is going to impact us. Let's get our $1 million lobbyists up on the Hill and turn these 3 senators. You can't give them time. You just can't.
I just remember like when I saw that it was being split off, I started hearing about this 2-track strategy, and then specifically I started hearing all these people promise that definitely nobody would vote on the bipartisan one, until Build Back Better had been voted on. And I just started having traumatic flashbacks to hearing to all the people who promised they wouldn't vote for the ACA if there wasn't a public option. I mean, it just seemed like it just had that feel to it. Like, no, that's not actually going to happen, and right. And so it didn't, right? And I think that and I think that it's and I think given Biden's long record of what he was like as a senator for decades and all that stuff, right? I mean, I think that it's not unreasonable to think that his heart wasn't really in the stuff that was better in there. I mean, he might have been happy to do it if it was easy to do, but I think that but I think on some of this stuff also, I would certainly like to believe, what you're saying about Bernie's influence and all of that stuff. But like either way, even before, right? I mean, like the Obama administration, where there was certainly no equivalent to that, it was still on some of this stuff, like the NLRB point. I mean, it was still better, like a lot better, than Trump, the Trump administration was, or any Republican administration was, because just the institutional relationships are different, and Republicans are going to appoint hardcore union busters to that position, because I mean it's their equivalent of what you're talking about. That you're really voting for however many thousands of people that the people that Trump appointed to all that stuff is more or less who Mitt Romney or whoever would have appointed to it. Which actually does bring us back to Peter Thiel, because that was another fun thing in that book, that Thiel was in Trump's transition team, and he like while in Trump's transition team, he spent his time like suggesting people who even like Trump and Steve Bannon were like, no, we can't appoint them to that. That's too crazy. So I would be happier if Thiel didn't get his senators elected, like just for many reasons. But any final thoughts before we wrap this up, Art?
No, I mean, I think it's really just watch, the money, where the money is going in and how much money goes into these races. That's going to determine, particularly, when you got these very close races, $20 million worth of ads can make a big difference, I think. But, in the last 3 weeks, we've seen that. We saw that, with all that like APAC money coming in to defeat progressives in the Democratic primaries. Right. It's the money's not as effective, I think, on a Senate level, but, you start to ramp up those dollars. So I don't know. for me, it's like, it would be great to have 52 senators and a Democratic House and really test how, sincere people have been talking about getting rid of the filibuster for things like Voting Rights Act or protecting abortion rights.
Right.
But for me, like, saving the judiciary is paramount. Like, all these federal, circuit courts, and I mean, so many things happen on a daily basis in these courts that implicate our daily lives in ways that we really is really obscured from us, I think. So that's it.
Yeah. No.
Have fun with the debate.
Yeah. No. I think I think I've just seen a very little bit of it, but what I watched was fun. It looked. It looked pretty spicy from what I saw.
It's great. You gotta love it. It's good. It's really good.
Okay. Yeah. So this. Yeah. So definitely looking forward to that. And yeah, I mean, I think it's I think even if it is, I mean, I think even if the better things don't happen in this scenario where the Democrats have the House or whatever, which I guess I think probably they won't, but but whatever, we'll see. Even if those better things don't happen, I think a holding action against the Teal people getting into to the Senate and the Republican majority in the Senate and all of those things, I think that just because I think just because there's like a 10,000 mile gap between what we want and anything that's likely to happen in the next couple of years doesn't mean that we won't notice the extra distance if it's like it broadens out to a 20,000 mile gap.
Of course. Just get ready for a lot of Marjorie Taylor Greene led investigations into Hunter Biden.
Okay.
You're going to know more about You're going to know every single pimple on Hunter Biden's ass by the time we get to 2024. So enjoy. I mean,
now you're not selling me anymore because the Marjorie Taylor Greene investigations into Hunter Biden would be hilarious. So I mean, I almost want to see that.
I mean, yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you
Good
so much,
luck,
Sam.
and have fun in LA.
Absolutely. All right. Sam Seder, best known for his work on Bob's Burgers, but apparently also the host of a political talk show. So check that out. Before we transition to watching the debate, we do have the promo video for LA. So let's just watch that real quick.
Seinfeld's actually problematic, and you suck, and shut the fuck up, and this is a problem, and that's a problem, and this is this, and that. And then Jordan Peterson comes along and goes, no, actually, you're great, and you should have a government-provided life.
So yeah, that is a week from Sunday, October 23rd at the Terragram Ballroom in Los Angeles, 7 p.m. LA time. Ticketmaster link is in the description.
Tickets still available on that one? I'll go to that one.
Yeah, tickets still available. You should come.
Yeah.
Should spend a weekend in LA.
Oh my God, yeah.
So yeah, me, Ryan Lake, Jason Miles, Deep State Cuba, Matt Leck, and David Griscom, and Anna Kasparian, Nando Vila, Daniel Bestner, C. Derek Varn. Should be a very good time. Did one of these for the Michael Brooks show back in February 2020, so just a few weeks before the world shut down at the Bell House in Brooklyn, which was a ton of fun. I was actually thinking when Sam was talking about being in Las Vegas, it was like a little bit bittersweet because I kept thinking about being in Las Vegas shortly after that, because the last day, I was there over the weekend. The show was on a Friday, and I stayed I crashed on Michael's couch in Brooklyn over the weekend, and my wife, visited a friend of hers in New Jersey, and we all got together for lunch before Jen and I left on Sunday, and which was actually the only time, since even though we'd lived in New Jersey for years, I was always going into Brooklyn to meet him. It was actually the only time Jen ever met Michael, but which was hilarious in itself, because I remember she was like, "Oh, this is so weird. Every time I see Ben watching YouTube, it's always either you or Bernie Sanders." And to which Michael's immortal response was, "Yes, that's correct. That's what you should watch." But during that conversation, he said that he was thinking about driving to New Hampshire to canvass the next day. And, I started feeling guilty about not having done any of that. So I actually ended up a couple weeks after that, just before the Nevada caucus, flying into Nevada and spending a day canvassing cab drivers in the Vegas Strip. And then so my most recent time being in Las Vegas was when that winning effort was going on, and it's all mixed up in my head with hanging out with people there that night, and getting very baked on legal Nevada weed, and and it was a good time was had by all.
Oh, that sounds magical, to be honest.
It does, actually. It was.
Jeez. A perfect time there for a second, a moment in time.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like just before everything goes to shit. But yeah.
Did you go to one of those like weed mega complexes in Las Vegas? Or I guess they're like off the strip or whatever. Did you go to one of those?
No, I didn't go to one. The volunteer, the other volunteer I was staying with, just okay. Like had a bunch, So I'm actually curious now what that's like. I've it's weird enough to me. It's not, it's not legal in Georgia, but like, right. Going back to Michigan, which is where my parents lived until recently. It was going back there. It was like weird enough to be right by where I grew up, and just see the giant billboards. It's like, come blah blah blah. Best best cannabis in the state. And it's like, man, this is like 5 minutes away from where I went to high school. All that fucking sneaking around I did, right? But
I know, yeah, it could have been so much easier.
Yeah, exactly. So then just like walking around just regular weed stores is weird enough. I can't even imagine the places you're describing.
Oh my God. I just gotta say this though. I was watching it was basically a tour through, I guess it's like the biggest weed like mega complex in Las Vegas. I think it's called Planet 13. You can look it up. There's a bunch of videos on it. But what's funny is that like only a tiny percentage of that actual complex is devoted to buying weed. The rest of it is just like photo ops, Instagram things that you could do, and then like all this expensive weed paraphernalia that you would never buy. So I was thinking it's almost like they've they've like reinterpreted the having to hang out with the weed guy thing, but with like just buying a bunch of stupid products and taking Instagram photos.
Yeah,
So-
because that was an experience everybody really enjoyed when it was illegal. You got to make sure that you've replicated that somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let us get to it.
Have you haven't watched any of this yet?
No, I'm keeping myself pure. I mean,
I cheated. I listened to it, but I think you're gonna like it. There's some good stuff in here.
yeah, I watched like a minute because I was kind of like browsing around within the video to try to get a sense of it, and the minute I watched was pretty good. But
I got more of an aesthetic take. I think you're gonna be the Dr. Drew to my Adam Carolla in this one. But there's some funny stuff in here for sure.
Nice. Let's see. Let's get rid of this.
There's some interesting debate tricks that I think you're gonna catch that I appreciated.
Fair enough. All right. Let's get this started.
We do begin tonight with the state of the economy. Every poll shows the issue of inflation is by far the #1 concern among voters. The cost of everything from food to housing to energy is on the rise. Mr. Vance, you have said as far back as July you believe the nation is already in a recession. You blame that on reckless Democratic spending. However, some of these policies, including the infrastructure bill, will provide tens of billions of dollars for things in Ohio, like clean water, airports, and highways. Do you think some of that money is well spent?
Well, of course, some of the money is well spent, but when we're talking about $6 trillion, there's a lot of money that isn't well spent. And that's fundamentally the problem with what we've seen out of the Biden administration is simultaneously they've borrowed and spent trillions of dollars that we just don't have. And that's thrown fuel on the fire of the inflation problem. And at the same time, they've completely gone to war against America's energy sector. And you can't do both of those things at the same time. They're each bad ideas. But when you do both of them at the same time, you're going to get record inflation, which is exactly what you expect to get. Now, Tim Ryan, of course, has supported all of these policies 100% of the time. And this really is the contrast on these economic issues between Tim Ryan and myself. I believe we've gone in a fundamentally bad direction over the last couple of years. I think people deserve to go to the grocery store without it completely breaking the bank. Tim Ryan has voted with these policies 100% of the time. Every single time he gets an opportunity to stand up for Ohioans, he chooses to bend the knee to his own party.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Congressman Ryan, a similar question to you.
I don't want to just stop quite this quickly, but that was a really interesting answer because he sort of said that Tim Ryan, like, what's the accusation exactly? He supports inflation?
Yeah, he supports inflation because of he's attacking the the energy industry, which I don't know exactly how so, but it's his fault. I think inflation. And I think he's banning grocery stores too.
Yeah. Well, all right, that is a little extreme. I mean, it's weird. I mean, I guess it was very slick because like he's saying some like vague stuff about, you know, what he thinks is causing it. But then he's like, well, that's the difference between him and me. I think inflation is bad. You know, like
right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he loves Tim Ryan loves inflation. It's a big part of his policy platform, I think.
Yeah,
more inflation.
Yeah, and the energy thing is also, I mean, you know, whatever. I mean, they're actually like the idea that like Biden, I don't know, banned oil or something like.
Right.
You know, what are we actually talking about here?
Yeah, exactly. That's a big thing with all of them from the right is that Biden and I guess all the Democrats hate oil and gas. You know, which it's. I mean, like where's the proof for that? I guess.
Yeah, and also if you look at the profit margins for the oil and gas industry during this entire
thing,
you know,
oh god.
I mean, like
forget about it.
Yeah, they're doing fine. That's not it's not like, you know, they ran out of money, so they just had no choice but to raise prices.
Can we also point out that just aesthetically, JD Vance seems like an incredibly cool guy? Like he's just instantly likable, right?
Yeah.
Just, I mean, I guess both of them, but like what I like, okay, you tell me, you probably know more about Tim Ryan than I do just from his record and all that, but his energy is actually kind of interesting because he seems like a pissed off dad, like your dad arguing with a manager at a Firestone or something. So that's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun energy. JD Vance just seems like a dweeb, you know, like one of your chatters actually said that he seems like a dweeb.
Yeah, no, he does. Not quite as bad as Blake Masters.
Oh God, Blake Masters seemed like an AI or something. That guy, Jesus, what's going on with that guy?
Yeah, I guess these are the people that Teal surrounds himself with. Which,
yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but. Yeah, I also, this is a little off topic, but I think I've seen multiple claims in the chat that you do a really good Slavoj Žižek. And I've got to say, I mean, I think we've talked like 3 or 4 times on your show, and somehow this has never come up.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, I don't want to force it, but I've listened to so many and I love your interviews with him. People should go check that out. He's like enemies with you, right? Hasn't he said before that he's like challenging you or something?
Yeah. We were on Feldman together.
Right.
It was me and him and Russ Sabriglia and Anand Hussein and he was like, it's like I can't do it justice, right? You know, I'm not, so I shouldn't try. But he was like, it's like, oh, it's, you know, thank you to everybody, even my greatest enemies. Ben and Russell. Yeah.
So it'd be like, yes, this guy Ben Burgis, he's my enemy. I don't know why, but he is. I don't like him. I just pick people to not like. I guess that's my stuff.
Well, I had talked to, you know, I talked to him several times on YouTube, right? But I last over the summer, you know, I was at this event, the Hay Festival in the UK, and
in-person Žižek?
Yeah, I got a good extended dose of in-person Žižek, and it was like the same kind of thing, but like more extreme when he's in person. So it's like there was like you know, he'd like introduce me to people. And he'd be like, "Oh, this is Ben. He's very problematic. You know, he's sexist. He's an enemy of progress. You know." There was a point where I was just like in the green room. I had my like laptop on my lap because I was like getting ready for a debate or something. And he just walks through, and there are like a few people with him, and he does this like double middle finger thing.
Yeah,
and he says, "Hey, fuck you up the ass," and then he turns to the people he's with. It's like, no, it's okay. You know, Ben is my friend. I must greet my friends in this manner.
Yeah, well, he's said that's the pure sign of affection from him, because he said many times that that's how you form a true friendship, is by saying "fuck your mother" or whatever to people. That's like,
yeah, no, that is pretty good. Yeah, he said, I think he might have told the story in public before, but so I don't think I'm talking out of school, but he did this thing. He had this whole thing that he was telling people there about how like the moment when you know, he was like most proud of his son. He was like, his son is like 16 or something in the story, and he said he was like, you know, he was like he was like arguing with him, or he was mad at his son or something. He's like, it was nothing bad. He's just being annoyed, right? and then at some point he tells his son this thing that's like some like traditional like Slovenian fuck you phrase, which is like is something like, you know, mad dog, fuck your mother, and to which his son responds without having to wait a beat, that already happened. That's how I got here. And Slavoj is just so proud of him for like having that comeback, you know, that quickly.
Oh my God, that's
what I knew he was my son.
He's the perfect dad. He's clearly the perfect dad. Oh my God. You've seen the Astra Taylor documentary where she just follows him around? Have you seen that?
I haven't actually seen this, no.
Oh my God. It's probably one of the best documentaries ever made. It's just called Žižek ! And he says there's like it's just like a million funny quotes in there. There's a part where they're just in a restaurant, the documentary, the person doing the documentary and him, and he points to a picture of himself giving a speech that they took. It's in a newspaper, and he's like, "Let me ask you, would you let your daughter date this man? I look very much like a criminal." Like he's just doing like jokes like that the whole time. It's great. It's one of the best documentaries ever. Just him being a goofball. It's great.
Yeah, nice. Well, yeah, I was gonna say now I want to see him debate JD Vance, but I actually don't because he has a habit in debates of being like, yeah, actually you're right.
Yeah. I don't feel like doing the debate anymore. I just agree with you. Yeah, because that's more fun. He's a fun guy. He doesn't want to like do blood sports. He wants to have a good time,
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
even though he did, even though he did give Jordan Peterson a little bit of a hard time. That's probably why Jordan Peterson picked Zizek over doing a debate with like Richard Wolff.
Oh, totally.
Because he's like, oh, this guy. And even then, he was like, oh, this guy Zizek's kind of a comedian and a goofball. Yeah. And, people all fell in love with Zizek. I feel like probably a bunch of even Peterson fans,
Totally, yeah. I think, 100%. I actually said that in Canceling Comedians, the part where I talk about this at the end, that like, I absolutely think that that's a big part of why Peterson passed on Richard Wolff and said yes to Slavoj, and why more recently, right? He actually like Peterson actually, because like Nathan Robinson wrote that article about him years ago, the Intellectual We Deserve or something like that, and which like has long irritated him, right? He's brought that up every now and again. Yeah. And then like, he literally, Peterson goes on, Peterson, like on Twitter somehow or another, people had like brought it up again or something like that. And he was like, anytime, any place, Mr. Robinson. And so Nathan immediately, of course, was like, oh, cool. Yeah, sure. Let's do it. And then like having called his bluff, he's just ghosted him ever since. Like that's because like again, he doesn't want to do with somebody who he thinks, he probably thought like, okay, funny accent, eccentric intellectual references, whatever, like anything that happens in this won't look too bad for me. Was probably his initial thought. And, and I think in some way, a lot of ways, I really like what Slavoj did in that debate, which is, I've talked to him about this since, that it's like, I think he wasn't really trying to like, tear Jordan Peterson a new asshole or anything. He was just trying to talk to people in the audience who find Peterson compelling and, sort of show them that there's this like, that like, yeah, the person you have in mind when you're thinking about the left is, which is like roughly that Michael Brooks clip in the promo that we played earlier, right? Like that person is not who you should be thinking of, right? Think about me, right? Like let's say like have this sort of more interesting, funnier, less moralistic, kind of vision of what the left is that he wanted to present to these people, which I actually think is a great thing to do with that opportunity. But like it ended up being perfect because Slavoj was mostly doing that. And, he did get a couple shots in that, can you name a postmodern neo-Marxist?
Yeah,
whatever,
right.
But like mostly it was just that somehow like Peterson just being on the same stage with him was just like was just lost his nerve and just kind of tripped over his own shoelaces. And so it's like I don't think Slavoj really needed to do anything. It was just Peterson just like getting embarrassed and fumbling like in this like really extreme way.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, I don't know, maybe this is good for just talking about debates in general, since we're kind of like watching a debate, but it's also like, there's not a lot of like fact checking. You're not going to like look up everything they're saying in the debate. So a lot of it comes down to just performance and vibe and stuff like that. And Peterson just has notoriously no vibe, and Slavoj Žižek is very vibe heavy. So in that case, it's it's no there's no contest.
Yeah, there are a few heavier vibes for sure. Saw also somebody in the chat mentioned mentioned his conversation with Michael Brooks, which was great for sure. Although it is also really a shame because he was gonna do it like in studio. Like that was the original plan. He was going to be in the U.S. Before COVID came down.
That would have been great.
He had this whole thing that he wanted to like go to like he wanted to go to like a deli with Michael, whatever. It was going to be a whole thing. So
that would have been amazing. That would have been so good. Jeez.
Yeah, no, we definitely missed something good there. But in any case, since sadly no Slovenian philosopher stepped in to do it, we are going to have to watch Tim Ryan debate.
Great. Here we go.
Let's see how it goes.
You heard it there. Republicans say during the Biden administration, you voted for every one of these spending bills to come out of Washington. They say they're reckless. Do you believe they've contributed to inflation?
Well, let's look at what they are. A bipartisan infrastructure bill that's going to create 600,000 jobs here in Ohio. J.D. Vance is against that. Rob Portman, the senator who currently holds the seat, a Republican, helped put that deal together. Look at the CHIPS Act, lands the Intel project that's going to create a $100 billion investment into Ohio. That's going to ripple throughout this entire economy. Supply chains, average wage, $135,000 a year. Look at the Inflation Reduction Act. And of course, JD is going to kick this campaign off with misrepresenting my position. In the Inflation Reduction Act, we're going all in on natural gas. I've been a natural gas proponent since I've been in Congress, and we have to get this right. We need to increase our production of natural gas. I support streamlining the permitting process around natural gas so that we can get it around the country, lower cost for businesses, and ship it to Europe to stick our finger in Vladimir Putin's eye so our allies win. But here's the problem. J.D. Vance has invested into companies in China. The problem we're having now with inflation is our supply chains all went to China. And guys like him have made a lot of money off that. And that is exactly why the supply chains are locked up. I'm working with these bills to bring production back to the United States.
We are going to talk a little bit about China in the next question for you, Mr. Vance. In your
just a real quick note about this, that I don't know if this is just how he's always said it or this is a choice, but Tim Ryan says China exactly the way that Trump does.
Yeah, he pulled that. He was like, people love that China pronunciation. So
China. Yeah, there you go.
Hitting it really hard. But I was going to ask you, you've probably talked about inflation before. Maybe we don't even need to go into it. I've tried to pay attention to like what's being written about inflation and all this. And it seems like, I was reading a poll thing about, what is it? It's like the top priority for people, when they poll, when they do polls or whatever, people say inflation. But then I was reading a thing where like, when it comes to like, well, what do we do to deal with that? It's like a totally all over the place answer.
Which is probably why Vance earlier was so vague about it, right? He was just like, here's some stuff that the Democrats did that I can blame for contributing to inflation. Right. And then I'm just going to pivot to, well, I think inflation is bad. I guess that's the difference between us.
So it's just kind of being used as sort of a Zodiac thing where it's like, I know you guys hate this. Let me just put whatever I think I could get away with as the cause and the solution or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think so. And, because like really, I'm not sure how seriously he, whatever. I don't think Vance, given truth serum, really believes that like, if not for this, if not for, like the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure bill, like there wouldn't be an inflation right now. Like,
yeah, we'd be totally fine. Like if we just didn't do that, everything, the economy would be totally perfect. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it is but like whatever. I mean, obviously, if you're the party out of power and like that's going on, I mean, you're
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
going to jump on, you know.
Of course,
I mean,
yeah.
right. You know, like I think that and I think that I don't know from a sort of centrist, you know, like kind of Bidenite perspective, you know, what the message is on that, right? I think that like, I think from like a really like left one, yeah, there's a lot you can say. I mean, like, look, you know, look at like some of the main commodities where inflation is the biggest problem, you know, food, gas, pharmaceuticals. Like a lot of those are things that policies we support would actually do something about. That if you know, stopped charging people for pharmaceuticals, or you know, you know, you had I mean, like, I know this sounds like crazily extreme to most American ears, but it's not like this is something without precedent in advanced Western democracies. You nationalized the oil and gas industry,
Right.
you know, so you could, during the transition period while you were putting it out of its misery, because we all need to transition other energy sources anyway, you know, for extremely obvious reasons.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like right now, like the kind of the foreign policy stuff that's going on, that's even very obvious if you watch just mainstream news, is kind of like, yikes, like this is what we got to do for oil. Oh my God, like we got to figure something else out. This is
yeah.
insane.
I mean, that's why, you know, I mean, I don't know. That's why, like, yeah, I always think about the when I was living in South Korea back in I guess it was like 2011, and yeah, it was 2011 that this happened, and there was this one of those sort of near misses that happens sometimes between the Koreas, where like there was some U.S. South Korean military exercises on a disputed island, and the North Koreans basically, like, there were newly installed leaders in both countries who both had something to prove. And so like the North Koreans could have just fired a few rounds into the ocean and decided that, like, made their point about the exercises, but instead they like shelled the island, killed several people. There were thousands of people who like fled from like Seoul for like the next few days because it's so close to the North Korean border. And then ultimately, you know, things calmed down and everything was fine. And I remember telling my students the next day, it's like, man, this is weird to me as an American, because I remember, like, you know, okay, not that I remember this from the news or whatever, but like when I was a kid, the United States invaded Grenada because they were building an airport, and you never know, right? Like this is how I'm used to thinking about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're building an airport. Who knows what could happen with that airport? Let's just invade the whole country, you know, just in case. And so it's like this stuff where like people actually shoot at you, and you like, you know, fire a few rounds back, and you're like, okay, don't do it again, and and you sort of move on, right? It's like, but that's the, you know, I mean, Saudi Arabia can like take bone saws to Washington Post journalists, and it's like, yeah, what are you gonna do, right?
We gotta go over there and grovel still, you know. I mean, it's like, come on, that doesn't seem like a great relationship there.
No, it doesn't. And then of course there's the global impending climate catastrophe, if you know we're interested in that too. So I mean, I think for many reasons, right, we need to transition away from oil. But while we're doing that, right, it could at least be in public hands, and you know, it could be, you know, could be sold at, you know, prices that people could afford and all of that stuff. But this was actually when I debated Charlie Kirk last year. It was about a year ago. There was a whole thing in that where he was bringing up the Nordics, and he was doing all the like cookie cutter conservative gotchas about the Nordic countries.
Right. They're actually capitalist. No, wait, they're communist and they don't work. Both of those.
Yes, but somehow both at the same time. Exactly. Yeah. And so one of those is, he was like, well, you like Norway, right? I was like, okay, sure. You know,
here we go.
And, you know, it just telegraphs the punch from so far off. It's like, well, you know where they get all the money to pay for all this stuff, right? I'm like, yeah, they have a nationalized oil company.
Right. That they then put into a sovereign wealth fund, right? That they invest in, like, renewable energy and all that stuff, right? I mean,
well, yeah, no, that's true too. Yeah, I mean, that was the Monday's episode with Matt Bruno. We were talking about this, but yeah, but like also true. But he was like, oh, so it's oil. So
yeah,
use
right.
oil.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, yeah, Charlie. I mean, look, I do think we'd be better off transitioning to other energy sources. But yeah, if we are going to use oil, I'd much rather have it be publicly owned oil.
Right. Yeah.
And then he said something weird about how he thinks that private oil ownership is a strategic advantage or something like that. And
Yeah.
I've had a year to think about it. And I still don't know what that means.
Charlie just doing some improv there, probably. But well, I guess maybe this is an obvious point, but maybe something that you're like, very good at talking about. With what's interesting to me about this debate is that Tim Ryan, of course, we're going to get pushed over to Tim Ryan's side, right? Because but we're not really. I don't think I or you are like really big like Tim Ryan fans or supporters. So like maybe there's an answer he can't give, and this is a stupid question, but I'll just ask it. Like with the inflation thing, if one answer that he can't give would be like, well, if we had a more democratically run economy, inflation like this, of this kind that we're seeing, that involves at least a little bit of corporate greed, right? Like we can all probably agree on that, like everybody. That might be less of a factor, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, I also think like, I mean, all right. So there's like the crazy socialist stuff. Like I think that it'd be, again, I think we should nationalize the oil and gas industry, which it's like crazy how crazy that sounds in American politics, considering how many countries have done exactly that, right? But
to great effect too, like in the Nordic example.
Totally, yeah, yeah, and I mean, right, yeah, all over the place. So it's like, so that's one thing, but like also just like, look, I remember a little while ago, one of, Fetterman, who's also, somebody I have mixed feelings about. I mean, I guess I like better than I like Tim Ryan, but that's like, is, he's intermediate. But like Fetterman had a like op-ed where he said we should start, prosecuting executives at, oil and gas and food companies for price gouging. And I remember, and it's like, it like showed how much that's just off the table usually. Cause like, I remember like Reason Magazine had this thing about how this is a crazy, horrible proposal and like whatever. And it's like, but no, we actually did used to do that, right? But this is not like an unprecedented thing. Like we do actually have laws about price gouging. And this is an absolutely on the table thing, even within the sort of regular democratic capitalist rules that you could prosecute people for. And I would really, how much of the problem would it solve? I mean, that's can only speculate, but like I do think it would be nice at moments like this if your executives at like Tyson Foods or whatever actually had to think like, okay, am I going to be able to justify this if it comes up? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. At least like take another, have another thought about it rather than just like, oh, this is just how we do. We just gouge people when we can,
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, and like you see quotes from like I'm trying to remember what company it was where the, what I think it was the CEO of this company said, like, I pray for high inflation rates. Cause like,
yeah, like on those earning calls or whatever they are, where they're just kind of like honest about that stuff. They'll say stuff like that, and it's like, oh, okay, all right. So we're getting a little bit more of the inflation story when you read some of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, there's a lot of oh my God, look at our record earnings and how awesome everything is.
Yep.
In the shareholder calls at the same time.
Yeah.
As like, to the general public, like, what can we do? Right. Like,
right.
And yeah, it'd be good to press on that a little bit by making people worry that, if like, making people worry about what they could could justify it. And then again, I think the pharmaceutical case is like even clearer, because you can like that's a place where let's say like you were just going to, whatever you think the like most plausible story, and I don't think it's monocausal, but like whatever you think the most plausible story is about inflation. I mean, like just okay. Let's say there was going to, I mean, I do think that there are like a handful of commodities they're probably driving it more than anything anyway, but like even if that wasn't the case, even if there was just like generally going to be, that was just generally going to be the trend for everything, okay, you could at least like do some basic social democratic things and take like some of the things that are necessities of life out of that, and people would be way better. And I don't expect Tim Ryan to say anything like that. Like I don't think Tim Ryan's gonna have a great response on this stuff. The stuff I have seen, I think where Tim Ryan's gonna be good in this debate is just kind of like I remember like a minute I saw that was like really good. Spoiler is where he is just talking about Vance abasing himself to Trump.
Yeah, that is really good. That's when Tim Ryan really gets into the angry dad side of it toward the end. But it's really good. It's really good.
Nice.
Your 2016 book, Hillbilly Elegy, you called the idea that all the jobs went to China one of, quote, the lies we tell ourselves. In this campaign, you have labeled China as the enemy and implied they're taking over jobs and Ohio farmland. Where is that happening, and can you tell us specifically?
Well, look, absolutely, China is stealing our jobs. China has stolen a big chunk of our industrial and manufacturing base. What I said in my book is something I still believe today, that's not the only thing that's going on, but of course it's a huge, big part of the problem. Now you ask, why has China taken a huge amount of America's jobs? Well, one of the reasons is because energy is too expensive. You cannot do modern industrial manufacturing without high quality energy. Tim Ryan just told a big fib. He said he supported Ohio's natural gas industry, and he's always done so. And yet Tim Ryan, when he ran for president, was it 2 years ago, you supported banning fracking, both on public lands and generally speaking. That crushes the Ohio energy sector, and that's one of the reasons why manufacturers are going to China. Another reason Ohio manufacturers go to China is because the Chinese undercut American wages. The only way to really combat that is tariffs, which I've supported, and now Tim Ryan supports, and I'm glad that you do, Tim. But of course, in 2018, 2019, and 2020, you opposed the tariffs that started to bring some of that manufacturing and industrial base back to Ohio. China is a big, big issue, but China's problems are exacerbated by our own leadership's failures. Those failures go back 20 years to when Tim Ryan started in Congress. They certainly go back the last couple of years when Joe Biden took over.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Congressman Ryan, Republicans, as you say, they blame President Biden for a lot of the inflation problems. You told Colleen here in an interview last week, a few days ago, that we need new leadership across the board. You don't believe he should run again. Do you think President Biden is to blame for the inflation crisis?
Well, I think everybody's to blame. I mean, we're coming out of a pandemic. It's a problem. The question is, we're going to sit around for another 10 years and point fingers. What I've been proposing is a significant tax cut for working people and small businesses. Put money in people's pockets. We can sit here and argue about why it's here. It's a global phenomenon right now. We need to cut taxes for working people. Okay. And the bottom line is, he didn't answer the question. We have our supply chains in Asia. J.D. Vance invested in China and ships product and companies that ship products back. That's why we can't get out of this inflation problem. And as far as natural gas goes, once again, 2 questions, 2 lies from JD. I have, for my entire career, supported tariffs on China. One of my first bills I had was to penalize China for manipulating their currency. I worked to get tariffs on China's steel coming in. That led to a $1 billion investment in the Youngstown steel mill. And I supported generally Trump's position on China in Chinese tariffs. While he's investing in China and making money, I'm trying to fight these guys. And the same with natural gas, because he brought it up. You could go back my entire career. We have 2 natural gas power plants in my congressional district that I helped us get. And the union that works in the natural gas industry endorsed me. Do you think they're going to endorse me if I'm for banning fracking?
And just
it's
quickly,
just not true.
Do you want President Biden to run again in 2024?
No, I've been very clear. I'd like to see a generational change. Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, the president, everybody.
All
Like,
right.
we need a new generation of
Gentlemen,
leadership
it's time
across
to
the
move
board.
on to a new question. And this is an area where there is a very clear dividing line between the two of you, and it is abortion. Our latest poll shows that this is the #2 issue for voters here in Ohio. Representative Ryan, you are campaigning as an abortion rights supporter. You might have to legislate that if you are elected. So what limits, if any, do you support on abortion?
I support going back to Roe v. Wade. That was established law for 50 years, and we didn't have all the chaos that we're having now. We read at least a couple articles every week of young people, underage girls who have been raped, or women who have had significant problems with their pregnancy, not be able to get help in the state. They got to go to
Indiana. They got to go to Illinois. And that's not good enough for J.D. Vance. He supports a national abortion ban in which he wants women to have to get a passport and go to Canada. Like, we've got to have some moderation on this issue. He's got a very extreme position. J.D., you called rape inconvenient, right? Rape is not inconvenient. It's a significant tragedy. And he thinks that we should have Ohio state law, which says if you're raped or pregnant through incest, that you should be forced to have the baby. This is the largest governmental overreach in the history of our lifetime. Complete violation of personal freedom and liberty of women in this state. And I think we should maintain that right. And I think we should make sure that none of the extremists get to the United States Senate. We should codify Roe v. Wade.
All right, Mr. Vance, I want to ask you, one of your Republican colleagues, Senator Lindsey Graham, is proposing a 15-week national abortion ban. Is that something you could support at the 15-week point?
Well, first of all, I did not call rape inconvenient. Congressman Ryan knows that's not true. But let me just address my view very specifically, and I'll answer the question about Lindsey Graham's legislation. So look, I am pro-life. I've always been pro-life. And I grew up in a poor family and a poor community. I saw a lot of young women have abortions when I was growing up. And one of the things that always struck me is it felt like a lot of those young women didn't have options. They felt like they didn't have the health care that they needed. We got to fix that. They felt like it would have ruined to have a baby so early, would have ruined their career, their personal lives. We've got to fix that sense too. I recognize, of course, that a lot of people are pro-choice, that they have a different view on this issue than I did. I was raised by a woman, the woman who saved my life, my mamaw, was a woman, an old school Democrat who believed that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. That's not Congressman Ryan's view. He says that he wants to codify Roe. He voted for a piece of legislation that would have overturned Roe and required abortion on demand at 40 weeks for fully elective reasons. He also voted for a piece of legislation that would have prevented doctors from providing medical care to babies who survived botched abortions. Now, on the Lindsey Graham bill, my view on this is, generally speaking, Ohio is going to want to have different abortion laws than California, than Texas, and I think Ohio should have that right. But some minimum national standard is totally fine with me. We're talking about 5-month-old babies, fully formed babies who can feel pain. No civilized country in the world allows elective abortion that late in pregnancy. I don't think the United States should be an exception.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Congressman Ryan, in 2000.
That's kind of, I mean, that's about as best as an answer he can give for an impossible topic, right?
Yeah, I mean
it's total BS, but I mean,
well, it's also weird. I don't understand. I mean, if you really think it's murder, why should Ohio have different laws than California or anybody else? I mean, are you really going to be like, well, look, I mean, maybe some states like murder. That's fine. You know, I don't want to interfere with that.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's because like public opinion has really like solidified on this, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, this is a total nightmare. This is a disaster. So it's gone from, and you see this with like all kind of right wingers, where it used to be it's murder. Like here's long descriptions about how it's murder, and like a baby was born and he came out and he learned to talk, and then they killed the baby. It was that. But now it's like, you know what? We just kind of want
it's the Ralph Wiggum thing about the I saw them in the closet.
It's not the baby looked at me and the baby talked to me. Exactly. It used to be that. Now it's gone to hey, just like we want hands off. And also this thing about, well, there's two things. There's the thing about they'll go into these extremely rare cases that are usually for the life of the mother, that rarely happen. Like most abortions happen before like 12 weeks, very 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 early on in the pregnancy. So they'll go into that, or then they'll go into and he said this, I just want them to have options. And it's like, no, that's the exact opposite of what you have.
No, that is literally the opposite of what you
Yeah.
actually want, right? Because it's like there's part of what he says that's like, yeah, sure, absolutely, right? That like that there are all kinds, look, there are undoubtedly many women who actually do fulfill exactly Vance's description, right? Of what he saw growing up, people who don't think that they're in a financial position to have children, and that's their main motivation. And I do think that's something that left needs to talk about. That like, I mean, in fact, I think this is the way to to differentiate a democratic socialist position on this from just a regular liberal one. That like, if you don't, if you just like, don't arrest people, for providing abortions, then obviously that's much better than if you do. But if you really want to give people a meaningful choice, that should mean that sure, as abortion services are provided, for free as part of a system of Medicare for all, but also there are no economic pressures to not have kids, right? That you have stuff that J.D. Vance absolutely wouldn't support, like universal free daycare, which he's actually, I talked about this in that article for the Daily Beast, the unbelievably phony populism of J.D. Vance. Like he has this, like he will come up with the weirdest contortions to like explain why actually it's like a totally populist thing to be opposed to like doing anything for the populace. And so he'll be like, oh, Medicare for all. Well, that's a giveaway to doctors and hospitals. And, universal free daycare. No, well, that's just saying that, like, everybody should be out working and nobody should be at home staying at home with their kids. And it's like, no, you asshole. This is the, literally, this is what giving people options looks like. That you say, yeah, you want an abortion, great, right? You could do that. And if it's, I don't think a first trimester fetus has any moral status. So like, I don't think like early abortions, I don't think how rare or frequent they are is kind of neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned. But like, if you do care about that, then yeah, I mean, make it a lot rarer. Right, because people would have more options, but he doesn't want that. I mean, he has like a sort of half-assed, like, oh, you could have like a child payments thing that's like not even as generous as the one that actually happened for a while into the Biden administration, the child tax credit. But like, he certainly doesn't. He's explicitly opposed to free daycare. He's explicitly opposed to Medicare for all, which, if you want people to be able to, like if you want people who do want to make that choice. And by the way, look, I totally agree. Look, I would be happier if there were no like gender-based pressures for one parent or the other to do it. But like, I totally agree that it's a legitimate lifestyle choice. If people want to stay home with the kids, that this is something a decent society would give people the option of doing. Absolutely. But like, he's not serious about that. I mean, what's the like what's his plan to like actually raise wages to the point where people could raise kids on one income?
Zero, no plan. 0 to well, let me say 0 to 1. 0 to 1 is
0 to 1, exactly. The teal book, yeah.
but you know what's funny is like you had Matt Brunig on
Yeah.
a couple days ago. Like read his stuff and Liz Brunig's stuff too.
Yep.
Like the left, the real left, or let's say,
Yeah, yeah.
are the most are the only pro-family group of I mean, and listen to Bernie's rhetoric. Even it's always about working families and families, how do families put food on the
No, for sure, right? I mean, like this is what actually pro-family policies look like. You know,
absolutely.
You give people the financial means to start families.
Absolutely, and it's quite, I think, like a very beautiful approach to society. Like the stuff that, I mean, Matt Brunig has written a ton about this, about you know, Finland and stuff, where it's like, no, this is a real priority. Like of course, you choose when you want to have a family, but when you do, there's going to be things in place that there's a floor for those children. You know, we're going to make sure that they have an education that's uniformly great. You know, you're going to have like all of this stuff that really is like an embrace of human life, as opposed to like just the grinding, you know, competitive, every man for himself view of the world that that JD Vance is obviously masking, and that he's, you know, that Blake Masters and all these guys are just trying to put a mask over.
Yeah, I mean, look, actually doing any of this stuff would involve redistributing Peter Thiel's money, and I don't think he would donate tens of millions of dollars to the cause of having more of his money being taken away. But yeah, no, I think that's all that is absolutely right. I mean, and I think you know, this is also, by the way, why I don't, you know, even though I disagree with her moral position, I'm not particularly bothered by Liz Brunig's you know, view on abortion.
She's kind of anti-abortion, right? For any
she's like, but she doesn't advocate laws against
no,
it.
not at all, which is a kind of a brain buster, you know, because the liberal approach to this is all no, like, you know, it's like you were saying, the argument of just like the freedom from state intervention, right, exactly, I guess. Yeah. But her, it's really like, I find her super interesting on this stuff, not because I agree with it, but because she shows you like what that would really look like if somebody were being honest about it. So she's like, I don't really like abortion. You know, she's a Christian. Sure. I don't like abortion. But of course, I'm not going to try to force people to give births. But so what I can do is be a socialist and say, here, let me try to incentivize you for having a family easier. If there's way more agreement on even these things that we don't agree on when people are honest about it, I feel like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's hilarious, right? Because like people will get mad at this. People will even get mad at Matt because of Liz's position, even though
he disagrees.
Matt, as far as I can tell, is not at all religious. You know, which is like, he's like a sort of, you know, I mean, I think he's like, whatever. I don't think he has a big problem with it. I think let's put it this way. I think he has the religious status. I think he has the religious status of many millions of Catholic dads who don't particularly give a shit about religion, but like the Liz Brunig position is like, it's like, yeah, right. For, you know, she's a Catholic. She doesn't morally like abortion, but like also she doesn't go around advocating laws against it. She's just like, well, let's make it easier for people who want to have kids to have it, which is like the best case, like the best you could possibly ask for anybody with that position. So I'm certainly not going to complain about it. But in any case, as is pointed out in the chat, we do need to watch more of this.
Okay,
too much fun here. So let's watch a bunch more.
You wrote an op-ed describing yourself as, quote, a pro-life member of Congress. Why the change?
I had some very personal conversations with women in Ohio who had gone through tragedies, who needed to have abortions for a variety of different reasons. And I just came to realize through the course of these conversations that the government has no place in this matter, that this needs to be left to the woman. It needs to be left to the doctor to make these decisions. And I think, isn't this what we want from our leaders? People who listen, people who learn from experiences, and then maybe have a change of position. That to me is really important, but we can't ignore the level of extremism that we're hearing from J.D. Vance on this position. No exceptions for rape and incest, right? If you get raped, J.D. Vance and others are going to say you have to have that baby. State mandated pregnancies for a rape victim. That is so far out of the mainstream, it's not even funny.
Let me address that.
Let me go back to Mr. Vance to find out about this. You have said in the past that you compared abortion to slavery, even in the case of the 10-year-old Ohio girl that made headlines across the country. You said two wrongs don't make a right. It sounds tonight as if you're saying there are some exceptions I would accept. Can you specifically tell us what you might accept as an exception?
Look, I've always believed in reasonable exceptions. This is a misrepresentation of my view, but let's hear it from me, not from Congressman Ryan. I absolutely think the 10-year-old girl, the case that we've, of course, heard a lot about, an incredibly tragic situation. I mean, look, I've got a 9-year-old baby girl at home. I cannot imagine what that's like for the girl, for her family. God forbid something like that would happen. I've said repeatedly on the record that I think that girl should be able to get an abortion if she and her family so choose to do so. But let's talk about that case, because why was a 10-year-old girl raped in our community, raped in our state in the first place? The thing the media and Congressman Ryan, they talk about this all the time. The thing they never mentioned is that poor girl was raped by an illegal alien, somebody that should have never been in this state in the first place. You voted so many times against border wall funding, so many times for amnesty, Tim. If you had done your job, she would have never been raped in the first place. Do your job on border security. Don't lecture me about opinions I don't actually have.
All right. I really wanted to like go another 5 or 10 minutes, but like he just say that if Tim Ryan had voted for the border wall, that girl wouldn't have been raped.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. He's trying to spin it as an anti-immigration thing.
Which is also amazing because like, okay, do we, so surely like you must have some numbers showing that like more rapes are committed by undocumented immigrants than by people by native born citizens or people who come over legally, right? Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. We do intend to get to immigration later, but we do want to move on to a new topic here. We want to get into some of the claims made by each of you about the other one during the campaign. We are going to start with Mr. Vance here. Mr. Vance, Tim Ryan says you're a Silicon Valley vulture capitalist who is out of touch with the needs of everyday Ohioans. Explain to voters why you think that's wrong.
Well, there are a couple of things. So Tim Ryan has this whole thing in his campaign that I'm actually an out-of-state Californian, even though I was born and raised in this state. And the reason I left when I was 18 was to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. That was the first time I ever left the state of Ohio. I went to Ohio State University. I started a business here. I raised my 3 small children here. And this is a ridiculous accusation from a guy, by the way, 20 years in Washington, who has never actually had to employ people and has never actually created a single job. My business in Ohio has been involved in investing and supporting the creation of nearly 1,000 jobs just in our state and jobs elsewhere as well. I believe in investing in our communities, and I've actually put my money where my mouth is, taking a big risk by getting out of Silicon Valley and starting a business here in Ohio. And I want to be clear about something. Tim Ryan represents a congressional district that has lost 50,000 jobs just in his time in office. Those of us who create jobs know what it's like when you have bad policies, and we know what it's like when you have good policies. I'd like Tim Ryan to lecture me on my business background a little bit less, and maybe explain why the guy who's the biggest fighter of China had his own congressional district lose tens of thousands of good manufacturing jobs to China just in your time in public service.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
The problem is, and you know why we lose jobs like that? Because guys like you, JD, make money off of investing in China. He, in his first venture capital fund investments, you invested into China. And you have the audacity, you have the one that ships jobs from China to manufacture things that go to, like, I don't know if it's Vail or some kind of ski resort or something like
so
that.
Your consultants
I'm telling
gave you this line,
so
and you don't actually know it.
I'm telling you, JD, you've not denied investing into China, and you're talking about illegal immigrants. He has businesses in Ohio that actually hire foreign workers. You think we're stupid, JD, and we're not. I'm just telling you that you're from Silicon Valley. You don't understand what's going on here in Ohio. You invest into China, you hire foreign workers, and you are funded by a Silicon Valley billionaire. He gave you $15 million, funded your primary. Mitch McConnell is giving you $40 million, all corporate money from the corporations who ship jobs overseas. Now you want to parachute into Ohio and you want to try to buy a Senate seat. It's not going to work because everybody can sniff it out that all you want to do is be senator.
And Tim, how many tens of millions of dollars have you gotten from Apple, from Google, from the companies that have shipped a lot of jobs to China? You can't even name the company that I allegedly invested in that ships jobs to China. It's a total. No,
did you invest in China?
Which company did I invest in China?
I'm asking you, did you?
Not that I know of. I have no idea what you're talking about, Tim.
You're going to
Well,
do
I'm
just
sure
fine.
our fact checkers will determine
Please
that.
do.
And we want to ask you, while we were on this topic, you have each made some headline-making statements during the campaign. Mr. Vance, in an April interview with Gateway Pundit, you suggested that President Biden is intentionally allowing fentanyl to cross the border in order to target and kill MAGA voters. Do you believe the president is trying to kill people who did not vote for him?
Well, I didn't say that he was intentionally killing people. What I said, Colleen, is that his rhetoric on how he views people who didn't vote for him is totally beyond the pale and totally unacceptable. And by the way, Tim Ryan, who runs all these...
Just parenthetically, clearly not what he said.
I was going to look up what he exactly said. Do you know what he said?
No, but I mean, like, she just said, I don't know if what she just said was an exact quote or not. Please do look it up. But, but I remember seeing that before, and it's like, what he's saying is not like, oh, I was like slightly misquoted. Like, here's the exact thing I said. It's like different in a nuanced way. He just said something that was like almost entirely unrelated to what she just said that he said. It's like, oh, you said that Joe Biden was trying to kill Trump voters with fentanyl. What do you say about that now? Oh, what I was saying was that we should lower the top marginal tax rate.
That is great. Classic debate move.
Like, I mean, clearly whatever he said, it was not, I mean, either the quote was just made up, in which case he should have said that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, I've never said anything like this.
Right.
Or he should have, whatever. But like what he did was like, oh, that's not what I said. What I said was, and then have this thing that's so far from it that it's like, no, clearly this isn't even closely enough related to what she said that this could be like, oh, you're like, you said what that second thing was like somehow misrepresented as the first thing. But like you said that Biden like disrespects Trump voters and that was somehow misrepresented as he's trying to kill them with fentanyl.
That's a great move. What a great move. I'm going to use that next time I get caught lying. I'll read the actual quote. Let's see. If you want, just for fun, why not? If you wanted to kill a bunch of MAGA voters in the middle of the heartland, how better than to target them and their kids with this deadly fentanyl? So, I mean, he said it's pretty much did say that, but yeah, you're right. His strategy was to just, no, we're going to talk about something else, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that quote is not, oh, what I said was that Biden, disrespects Trump voters, or I don't know how to talk to it. Like, that's not that, right? I mean, he said this thing that's like not exactly that Biden was trying to do that, but it's not exactly not that Biden was trying to do that, right? He's like, somebody were trying to do this. I better.
Exactly.
All right, let's keep watching.
TV commercials saying that he wants to appeal to Trump voters, wants to appeal to Republicans, also says that he wants to kill and confront, what is it, the MAGA movement, Tim? That's not exactly the rhetoric of a unifier. What I do think is that the end result of Joe Biden's policies and the end result of his rhetoric is that, one, we hate each other a lot more than we did 2 years ago. That's a significant failure of leadership. And yes, the fentanyl crisis is way worse than it was 2 years ago. Why is it way worse? Because Tim Ryan and Joe Biden have conspired together to reject every border wall funding proposal, to reject every proposal to cut off the.
I promise I'm going to get more disciplined in a minute about waiting longer, but he thinks that the reason there's a fentanyl crisis in Ohio has something to do with the border.
Yeah.
Because nobody, clearly it would be, outside of the realm of possibility to produce this in the United States.
It's impossible. Yeah, it's impossible.
I mean, also why, I've spent more time that is entirely pleasant in Youngstown, Ohio. I have relatives who live there. That's a place that has a fentanyl crisis. Nice affluent suburbs do not, right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
The difference is not that one of them is somehow insulated from the products being produced.
We'd have to believe that there's all this fentanyl sneaking in, but it's going directly to Ohio. They're just they're like, oh, we got to go to only Ohio. There's just something, we just like it there. The weather there or something.
Yeah. It just doesn't it's what are the illegal immigrants also stick it in people's arms themselves?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's I'm pretty sure that the problem here is not that I don't think you're going to fix this by focusing on the supply. Let's put it like that. And I also think given the demand is there, there could be a force field between the United States and Mexico. And people would come up with a way to manufacture fentanyl.
There's no other substances to abuse,
Yeah, exactly. And that's something they can only do in Mexico. It's there's stuff that only exists in Mexico that goes into that.
The fentanyl plants grow wild in Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
Amnesty to reject every proposal that would actually secure our border and stop the flow of these illegal drugs.
Thanks, Mr. Vance. Congressman Ryan, we want to get to you here. It was alluded to, but on MSNBC, you said Americans need to, quote, kill and confront the extremist movement within the GOP. In the past, you've condemned Donald Trump's rhetoric as having the possibility to incite violence. Is that similar language that you once condemned?
Movement. Kill and confront the extremist movement, of which J.D. Vance, unfortunately, is a part of, right? Who says that the president of the United States is intentionally trying to kill people with fentanyl? Who says that the election was stolen? J.D. Vance does. Who runs around with Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who wants to ban books? You're running around with Lindsey Graham, who wants a national abortion ban. You're running around with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's the absolute looniest politician in America. This is a dangerous group, and we do need to confront it. And that's why I'm running to represent the exhausted majority, Democrats, Republicans, and independents,
candidates
against the extremists.
We are going to turn now to foreign policy. Last week, President Biden made the shocking claim that we are on the verge of Armageddon. The reason being Vladimir Putin's threat to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So this question is for both of you. If that were to happen, if Putin were to use nuclear weapons, how should the United States respond? And we begin with you, Congressman Ryan.
Well, it would have to be an aggressive response. I don't think we're at that point where Vladimir Putin will. I hope he doesn't. We should be prepared for all contingencies should he do that. And it should be a swift and significant response. We cannot have a butcher like Vladimir Putin rolling into Ukraine. What he's done there is an absolute atrocity. And the fact that he's killed innocent people, innocent women, innocent girls, is so heartbreaking. And the fact that guys like J.D. Vance have said, I don't care what's going on in Ukraine. I will tell you, I've been to Pharma, I've been to Cleveland, I've met with the refugees. You know who I meet with? The women and the daughters and sons, because the husbands are in Ukraine fighting. That's the kind of freedom we need to support. And J.D. Vance would let Putin roll right through Ukraine. And I'm just telling you that we got to have a strong military, and we've got to make sure that we can push back people like Vladimir Putin if they try to invade a freedom-loving country. And J.D. Vance is weak on this.
Same question to you then,
Sure.
Mr. Vance. How should we respond if Vladimir Putin uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine?
So the answer is that nobody knows how we should respond if he uses nuclear weapons. Now, let me just address this. What Vladimir Putin did was disgusting and wrong, and we all have to admire what the Ukrainians have done as they've repelled this invasion. But let's just take stock of something that Tim Ryan said. And Tim, I don't think that you meant anything by it, but I want to hone in on this because it reflects the failure of the bipartisan foreign policy establishment in our country. The same people who got us into Iraq and the same people who got us into Afghanistan for 20 years. He said that if Vladimir Putin uses nuclear weapons, we should have a strong response. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean we're in a nuclear shooting war? I have 3 kids, and I'm running to be the United States Senator for the state of Ohio. I want to protect those children, and I want a foreign policy establishment that puts the interests of our citizens first. What everybody has been doing, and I've been at the very forefront of this, saying we need to de-escalate the situation. Vladimir Putin launching nuclear weapons against Ukraine is something we have to do everything possible to prevent. And right now, everybody in the Biden administration at least, seems to be sleepwalking into a nuclear war. That is the worst possible thing that could happen. We have to do everything to prevent it.
I think this is just quickly, because this is an important point here. If JD had his way, Putin would be through Ukraine at this point. He'd be going into Poland. Like, if he's using nuclear weapons, what do you want us to do? I mean, you can't just send hopes and prayers.
If I had my way, you'd put money at the southern border, Tim, instead of launching tons of money into Ukraine.
Thank you, candidates. We want to continue on foreign policy here, and we want to move to a.
So, somebody asked in the chat earlier if this is a alien versus predator debate, and I think it sort of is. I think that it's sort of not, because I do think that there's a big gap between them. Right, one of these people is way worse than the other, but I was
gonna ask, but I'll ask after. You say what you're gonna say, but
I was just gonna say, like, there are some very alien versus predator moments in here, like when Tim Ryan correctly said that that Vance was getting tens of millions of dollars from Peter Thiel and Mitch McConnell, and Vance is like, yeah, and how many millions have you gotten from like Apple, and et cetera, et cetera. It's like, yeah, okay, this is just one of those like nice classic moments of of like two opposed politicians telling the truth about each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they do. Like, there is a baseline of suckiness that that everything is operating from here. Again, relative to that baseline, one of these people is way worse than the other, but still, for the most part, one of these people is worse than the other. I do kind of have to give Vance a point on this one.
Yeah, Vance definitely gets a point on that one, and it's like that's the most telling moment of the debate right there. The one that you were not, maybe this part, but the one that you were talking about, when he calls him out on getting a bunch of money from Apple and all this stuff.
I mean, I also have to give a point on the one that we just watched. Because frankly, like, what the fuck does that mean? The aggressive response. Like, do you mean nuke Russia? Because if you mean that, it seems like let's have that discussion, because I would, you think about how bad it is that that wars are started with so little public control over the process.
Oh yeah.
Like, this would be that times infinity. I mean, that's like, this is like, if we're going to wipe out the human race, I think we should at least have like a very clear debate about whether to do it.
Yeah. I think That's some democracy I can really get behind right there.
Like seriously, like you're running for office. Tell me, like, I understand you're not gonna, was that it's not old man Ryan with his finger on the button, but so this is not your personal call. But like, even so, you're running for Senate. Like, I think we should know what your views are on this, and it should be a very aggressive response. And anyway, I don't think it's going to come up as that's pretty bad.
Yeah, like unfortunately, a lot of right wingers. Like I was watching the Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Rogan thing,
Yeah,
and she basically said what Richard Wolff has been saying about this too, where he's like, wars end with a negotiation, and there's gonna have to be some kind of diplomatic attempt or whatever before just like going all in on nuclear war or whatever. And it's like,
no, I mean, look, yeah, I mean that's got to be, frankly, either Tulsi or Vance making this point. I mean, is like one of the ultimate. What's the Onion headline? Heartbreaking, worst person makes good point.
yeah. I mean, and at the same time, like there's a lot of people I see, online who are, I agree with them on a lot of stuff, who are like, no, Russia is the aggressor, and they're really, I think totally understandably, like very emotionally,
yeah, sure,
they're very disturbed, and they're like, we got to do something, and anything against Russia is like on the table or whatever. I understand that emotional response too,
totally.
I mean, but it's just like in this case, I think you're right. It's like you want a little bit more of a clear answer, I guess.
No, I mean, I get that, but I think that, and like, look, there are some people. I don't think there are very many of them, frankly. I think it's pretty marginal, but there are some people who have like kind of lobotomized themselves in the name of anti-imperialism. Mm-hmm. And like, so it's like anything that goes up against the United States must be good. And, I think that's indefensible. Right. I think that what Russia is doing in Ukraine, I mean, I've compared it in print several times, I think, to the invasion of Iraq. And that's, I take that seriously, right? I mean, the one of the defining political experiences of my life was organizing anti-war protests in 2002, 2003. And, I'm still pretty mad about it. Like it's like being like the invasion of Iraq is pretty bad, but like also I think we got to separate out the question of like whether something a rival power is doing is a disgusting war of imperial aggression from the question of whether of like what role the United States should play in that conflict, right? It can't just be like, well, if what Russia's doing is bad, then anything the United States can do to, stand up to Russia or whatever must be good, right? Because that's like, I mean, look, at that point, you might as well say, well, Saddam Hussein was a disgusting mass murderous dictator, which is true, mm-hmm. right? So like deposing him was good. And then you're just like 2003 Christopher Hitchens. Right. So, like, I think that, and you think, like, I think the Iraq metaphor is useful because you think, okay, well, let's say some other power, China or the EU or somebody, had both the capacity and the will to, like, really intervene in that situation somehow. How would I have wanted them to do it? What would I have wanted them to do? Mm-hmm. And I think, well, okay, look, target, I'm totally fine. I'm 100% good with like targeted sanctions on Russian oligarchs, because I think like, yeah, if like China or the EU or whatever had like frozen some assets and confiscated some yachts from like Halliburton executives in 2003, I would have been all for that. Yeah. Like that sounds good to me.
That would have been amazing, yeah.
But like sweeping sanctions that would like that would have devastating effects on working class Americans, I'd be a lot more squeamish about that. And then like, would I want China spending tens of billions of dollars on weapons for the Iraqi National Guard? Would I want like Chinese intelligence to be to be sinking, in like providing direct intelligence aid to operations to like sink American ships in the Persian Gulf and assassinate American generals, and then like brag about it to the Beijing Morning News, like the way that American intelligence did the equivalent in Ukraine and bragged about to the New York Times. No, I wouldn't, because I'd be fucking terrified there was going to be World War III and we'd all die.
Right.
And similarly, you know what I would not have minded though? If like China or the EU or whatever had stepped in to like broker peace negotiations to either prevent the invasion in the first place or to like get an early American pullout like that would have been good. So yeah, I mean, I think that like, the tiny number of actual Putin apologists in the West, I think deserve nothing but contempt, but like, but also I don't want to accuse people of Putin apologism because they want de-escalation and peace talks. I think wanting de-escalation and peace talks is correct, both in general, because wars are really bad, and in particular because I don't want everybody I know and love to die.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just doesn't seem like there's any other option, and like even, it's pretty much the only option, right? I mean, if with like nuclear war, that's it. That's your only choice. So it's either like total destruction or diplomacy. I guess the only other thing like that I started thinking about, because I didn't think it was going to happen. I was like, oh, this is because
I mean, you're a good company. Like there was just like the Ryan Grimm talked about this, the Substack he just did. The CIA didn't think it was going to happen.
Yeah.
The Ukrainian government didn't think it was going to happen. Nobody thought it was going to happen.
Nobody, yeah. And plus, like,
for good reason, because it was a crazy thing for Putin to do, because it's like an incredibly self-destructive, reckless decision.
Absolutely, yeah. And so like when it did start happening, like I was like, whoa, like this is unbelievable. And I kind of started thinking like, well, I guess like one of the only things we could do is like look back in history and try to figure out how we got here, and hopefully try to figure out a way to avoid something like this ever happening again. But that's like a huge question that like our media is not equipped to talk about. And I don't know, to me, that's the most interesting thing. It's like, okay, like, is this just going to happen again? If we get out of this somehow, is it just going to happen again? And like, how do we, is it possible to avoid that? Is like, avoid this again? Like,
well, I mean, ultimately the way to avoid it would be to have like international institutions that were strong enough to restrain great powers from just doing whatever they want to. But like, I mean, this is why it's like really bad that the United States has like worked so hard and so effectively to sabotage having like an international criminal court with real power and et cetera, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's all like imperialist stuff, right? I mean, this all comes down to economics in the end, right? I mean, wouldn't you say, I mean, not to bring everything and not to be like reductionist, but that's in the end, we have to at least include that, right?
No, for sure. Anyway, yes, let's not do World War III, but let's see what comes next to the debate.
Another part of the globe. President Biden also recently made headlines saying he would use American military force to defend Taiwan if China were to attack. The question again goes to both of you. Should America defend Taiwan? Congressman Ryan, we start with you.
I believe that we should. This is, we have a commitment. Again, we do not want to be at war with China. We need to outcompete them economically. We need to make sure that we invest into the United States and outcompete them. But we do have commitments. And that's why I have always supported strong investments into our defense, including President Trump's defense budget, President Trump's initiative with the Space Force. We've got to continue to invest into our Navy. Love to get the ship repairs done here in Lorain, Ohio, and in Lordstown, Ohio, where we're talking about making sure we can take our ships out. Problem now, we take a ship out of the water, it's got 4 years before we can fix it and rebuild it. So we have these commitments, but we've got to have a strong military. We've got to have a strong defense, because you never know what circumstance we're going to be in. And I will tell you that China is no joke. They are investing heavily into their military, and you can't see it all.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Vance, same question. Should the United States militarily defend Taiwan if they're attacked by China?
Yeah, so Taiwan's a much different situation from Russia and Ukraine because of how important it is to American national security. Now, the policy of this country, bipartisan.
Just 2 seconds. I just want to say, I think it is hilarious that JD immediately says, "Oh, Taiwan's totally different," because this is where like alleged Republican dovishness about this stuff always hits a brick wall. Like they're willing to, they're willing to be like pretty, they're willing to be a little dovish about Russia, but China, makes the policy red.
Oh yeah, that's where we get into Red Scare territory always with them.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I wrote an article for Current Affairs back in like May or whatever when the big like Ukraine funding vote came out. It was called Congressional Progressives Need to Do Better on Foreign Policy, but that doesn't mean Republicans are doves. That was making the point that's like, look, I don't love the fact that AOC and all these people voted for this. I think at the very least they should have like tied the vote to like as a precondition, say like, no, we want like some kind of effort at de-escalation and talks.
Yeah.
But also like the idea that it's like, oh, the real anti-war voices now are the Republican Party. It's like, no, they fucking aren't.
Yeah.
Like you actually look at what all these like Josh Hawley and all these people, what they actually said to explain, like most Republicans voted for it anyway, right? But like the few that voted against it, most of the ones that voted against it, if you look at what they said, it was like it was the equivalent of that anti-war speech that Obama gave, back in 2004 or whatever, where he was like, oh, it's bad that we're going into Iraq because that's going to distract us from Afghanistan. It's the same deal with these guys. They're all like, oh, it's bad that we're like escalating with Russia because that's really distracting us from the important Cold War that we're supposed to be having with China.
Exactly. Yes, I feel that every time they're talking about that stuff. It's like, no, we're super anti-war because this bigger war, this bigger, scarier war that we love to like freak Nemas and Peepaws out about. All the time. I always feel that like that the scamminess of that. Plus, like I was just looking because I don't know, I was watching some video about this, and there was a big, the big defense bill in December, I guess it was, and it was the guys who called themselves libertarians, Rand Paul, Mike Lee voted against it, and then it's like they all vote for it. Bernie Sanders voted against it, and then like Elizabeth Warren or whatever. So there's no, there's no like real.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the video that's been going around of like, I don't know, some like I think it's like a LaRoucheite like screaming at AOC about this stuff. And it's like, look, yeah, I definitely have my criticisms of some of her votes and and some of these other people's votes for sure, but like also she's a pretty consistent no vote on most military budgets. So like this idea, it's like that. And then, yeah, I mean, you mentioned like Rand Paul, like that's a perfect example. Like he's supposed to be like one of the most anti-war Republicans.
Yeah.
And like, he's definitely better than most Republicans on some of the stuff, but like also he voted against the Iran deal.
Right.
Like if you want to talk about like actual like significant foreign policy votes in terms of like avoiding US wars, like that seems like one of the places where the rubber really meets the road. And it's like, no, he just couldn't, he just couldn't like make the base angry by supporting, O'Bungler's, effort at, diplomacy with like scary Muslims.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also like, I get the feeling that he knows like every Republican is going to vote for like the defense budget and all that stuff. So it's like a symbolic, like, oh, I can kind of seem like a libertarian, but yeah, like it's just nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's keep going.
by the way, over 40 years, was strategic ambiguity. The idea is that we wouldn't commit to doing one thing or the other, but everybody recognized that we would try to do something, maybe not send military troops in a ground war, but we would do something to try to defend Taiwan. The thing we need to do is get ourselves in a position where we don't have to rely on the Chinese and the Taiwanese in the first place. The reason why Taiwan is different is because they make so many of our semiconductors, our computer chips. The entire modern economy would collapse without it. We got to bring that stuff back to this country. Rob Portman, Tim mentioned earlier, senator, of course, of our state, a guy who endorsed me and was critical in getting the CHIPS bill passed. That's the sort of policy you need to break our reliance on China. It's a great piece of legislation. We just got to go much further so we don't have to defend island countries if it's not in our core national interest.
Gentlemen, we're going to switch topics once again. And our next topic is LGBTQ plus rights.
And for our question, you take a look at your monitor candidates. We send it to Nisha Pettyhome from the Next Star station WDTN in Dayton.
Equality Ohio says there are more than 500,000 LGBTQ plus citizens living here. Outgoing Senator Rob Portman is co-sponsoring the Marriage Equality Act that will codify same-sex marriage. Are you ready to support that bill? Why or why not?
Mr. Vance, we start with you.
Yeah, so I've come out against this bill, and I don't think it's actually about gay marriage. It's not about same-sex marriage or same-sex equality. Look, gay marriage is the law of the land in this country, and I'm not trying to do anything to change that. But if you look at the specific bill that's being proposed, it wouldn't just codify something that's already enacted in law. It would actually make it easier for both the government and a lot of private parties to sue religious organizations if those religious organizations don't comply with the dictates of the federal government. I'm a devout Christian, and I think it's important to protect religious liberty in this country. We remember about 10 years ago when the Obama administration, I'm sure supported by Tim Ryan, went after a group of Catholic nuns because that Catholic nunnery wanted to run its organization the way that confirmed with its religious beliefs. That should be okay in this country. And the problem with this legislation is it's going to unleash a wave of litigation against our churches, our religious organizations, our mosques, our synagogues, everything. That's why I don't think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Congressman Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I voted for that in the House of Representatives. I will support codifying that into the Senate. But only J.D. Vance can say that the bill that codifies same-sex marriage is not about same-sex marriage. Only JD. You're the only one, JD Vance, that can actually say that. It's unbelievable. The problem we have here is we have 15,000 marriages here in Ohio. And when you read Justice Thomas's opinion on abortion, which JD Vance wants to celebrate, it also included in there nullifying these marriages, and it also included in there getting rid of protections around birth control. This is what I'm trying to explain to Ohioans, that J.D. Vance is extreme on these issues. No exceptions for rape or incest. He called rape inconvenient. He said he denied it, but it's on tape, right? Now he says he's not for same-sex marriage. He's going right down the line with the absolute most extremists, the guys who want to ban books and everything else. Those are the guys you bring into the state to campaign for you, JD. These are extreme positions that Ohioans are rejecting.
Well, I want to just point out something about what Tim Ryan...
Very quickly, sir.
Yes, Colleen. Thank you. I want to point out something that Tim Ryan just did. One, I answered the question about same-sex marriage, and I identified very specifically a couple of problems with the legislation. Tim didn't address that. He just pretended that it didn't exist. Because here's the problem with Tim Ryan. He spent 20 years in Washington, D.C. He actually doesn't care about the details of public policy, and I'm sure he didn't even read the bill that he voted on. What he does is he reads the canned lines that his consultants give him. You could respond to the argument that I made, Tim. Instead, you decided to pretend, again, that I have views I don't actually hold, so you can't... Look, it's insulting. Voters deserve somebody who actually respects their views and speaks honestly to them about the issues. That's not what Tim's doing tonight.
We want to get something else on the record while we're on this topic. The Senate has a unique role of confirming Supreme Court nominees. Marriage equality, as the congressman mentioned, could be revisited by the Supreme Court. Will that be a litmus test for you if you are in the position of evaluating a Supreme Court nominee? And we begin with you, Mr. Vance.
I don't like any litmus test for any Supreme Court nominations. I just want good judges who interpret the Constitution. That's what I really want. And look.
Yeah, no. JD would absolutely be fine with pro-marriage equality, pro-abortion rights justice, as long as he thought they were good constitutional scholars.
Oh, totally. I wanted to say too, he did a thing just, because we're looking at a debate or whatever. We got to give it up for JD Vance on this one. He did a genius debate thing, I think, which is he said, this is a line that they should teach, like maybe in debate classes or whatever, which is if you look, like if you actually look is like the perfect debate line because he's talking about like the marriage law or whatever. If you actually look is the perfect line because it's implying that this other guy hasn't looked and I have looked. You know what I mean? And it's just before you can like your brain can like unscramble what if you actually look means, it's already in your brain. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that guy hasn't looked and he has looked. You know what I mean? Like I would use this if it was like, the moderator or whatever was like, so, you're under investigation for you took a bunch of money from, that was supposed to go to a child tax credit and you put it into your own account. And I'll be, well, if you actually looked, and I would, no, it's not true, actually. Like you're implying that there's some text somewhere that's like that he's wrong,
No, totally. It's a good way to it's a good way to just like refuse to talk about something that like because it gives people the sense that like what you're being accused of isn't completely true, but you don't even have to spell out.
Exactly. Like, there's something somewhere that's very like a scholar is looking at that like you don't get it and it's oh wow that sounds very technical. That's what it is.
Yeah, you wouldn't understand anyway. Let's move on.
Tim Ryan just accused me of being extreme on the LGBT issue. This is a guy who voted just a couple of months ago, right, for the Equality Act, the so-called Equality Act that would literally remove federal funding for free and reduced lunch programming for schools that don't let biological males participate in biological female sports. The extremist here, Tim, is you. And again, I don't expect you to actually answer the substance of what I said, but let's just at least be honest with voters about what our actual views are.
And we are on the litmus test question, and you can respond to him on that as well.
Yeah, I will have a litmus test. I will have a litmus test on Roe v. Wade. I'll have a litmus test on the same-sex marriage. I'll have a litmus test on birth control. We cannot keep going down this road of taking away rights. The Dobbs decision was the absolute first decision where the Supreme Court is taking rights away from people. It's not right. We don't want doctors in our bedrooms. We don't want doctors politicians in our bedrooms and politicians in our doctors' offices. That's not what we want. And that's what this group of people who have taken over the Supreme Court and taken over state legislatures want. They want control. They want to control women. They want to tell you what kind of marriage you can have. They want to tell you whether or not you can use birth control. And look, the reality of it is we got to get the government out of a lot of these decisions and let the local governments make the school and the education decisions.
Thank you, candidates. We are going to move on to another topic, immigration. It's something that comes up a lot on the campaign trail. It's come up a lot already tonight, and it's something you may have a chance to weigh in on if you're elected to the Senate. We begin with Representative Ryan. You recently did an interview with our Columbus station calling for continued construction of parts of a border wall where experts say it makes sense. You don't hear many Democrats calling for continued construction of a wall. In fact, when former President Trump proposed the wall, you're one of the Democrats who called it a, quote, vanity project. What changed?
Well, I think to have a wall from sea to shining sea doesn't make any sense. You can't put a wall in the middle of the Rio Grande River. But if you can put a barrier up somewhere that can prevent people from coming over, I'm all for it. But El Chapo digs under that barrier as well, which is why I've always supported increased funding for Border Patrol. I started the Border Technology Caucus to figure out how we can use technology that we have in the United States to prevent this fentanyl from coming in that goes from China to Mexico into the country. And now even more so with rainbow fentanyl, which is scary for so many people. It's got to be a comprehensive approach and then figure out who's in the country, right? If they're here, pay a fine, pay back taxes, pass a background check and come into the country. I also have a resolution designating fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction so we could have a whole of government approach, making sure we stop it. This is in contrast to our guy here who is investing into companies that hire foreign workers. has a real tough position on immigration, and then he hires people in invests in companies that hire foreign workers. Real tough position on China, and then he invests in China, manufactures products, and sends them back.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Vance, I want to get to you. We have a question for you on this. You call for reform to our legal immigration system as well on your website, but you say we should only allow immigrants in if they contribute, quote, something meaningful to our country. How would you define what is meaningful? Can you give specifics?
Well, I think skills and ability to learn or already know the English language, that's all very important. I'm a big fan of what Tom Cotton has proposed called the RAISE Act. But look, I mean, the illegal immigration problem, I know very personally, and I've been affected by it very personally. My mom struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early childhood. And I'm very proud to say, by the way, she's been clean and sober for 7 years. I'm sure she's watching right now. I love you, Mom. But one of the great blessings for our family is that we got a second chance with Mom. We got that 7 years clean and sober because the poison that was coming into the country, thank God, 15 years ago, was not nearly as dangerous as the poison that's coming into the country today. Tim Ryan has done nothing to stop the flow of fentanyl. He talks about wanting to support a stronger border. He talks about wanting to be bipartisan and get things done. Well, Tim, you've been in Congress for 20 years and the border problem has got worse and worse and worse. I don't care about what you want to do, Tim. I care about what have you done? What have you actually done to reduce the flow of fentanyl so that people like my family are not as affected by this terrible addiction crisis? That's the thing I really, really worry about here is that, look, we all agree, okay, we want a strong border. We want to make sure El Chapo doesn't get it. Of course, we believe those things. Tim Ryan has had 20 years to get something done and he just hasn't done it.
And Congressman Ryan, we're going to give you a chance to answer that as well as our next question, which is that the Vice President Kamala Harris said just last month that the southern border is secure. So do you agree with her? And how do you respond to the accusations that just came from Mr. Vance?
Kamala Harris is absolutely wrong on that. It's not secure. We have a lot of work to do. I'm not here to just get in a fight or just toe the Democratic Party line. I'm here to speak the truth. We do have more work to do, which is why I have a resolution to designate fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, which is why I vote for more border patrol, why I vote for a barrier, why I vote for technology and started the Border Technology Caucus. So that's what I have done. You know what I haven't done? I didn't start a fake nonprofit pretending like I was going to help people with addiction like J.D. Vance did. Literally started a nonprofit and didn't spend one nickel on anybody. In fact, he brought in somebody from Purdue Pharma to be the spokesperson for the nonprofit. The same drug company, Big Pharma, the big drug company that had all the pill mills going, got everybody addicted. 1 million people died, JD. 1 million people died. And you started a nonprofit to try to take advantage of people in Ohio. And you know what? All you did with it was launch your political career. His campaign manager worked for that nonprofit. He ran a poll to check his own standing from that nonprofit. I'm not going to take a backseat to you or anybody else on fentanyl, drugs, or immigration or anything else. Somebody that would, what kind of man would start a fake nonprofit to try to deal with addiction and not spend any money on anybody?
None of this is true, of course.
So none of this is true, of course. Literally, the J.D. Vance super PAC, but essentially the J.D. Vance campaign, like their document that they produced, which I have read because it was, because some reporter found, the Dropbox link that all this was in. Like, I've read this fucking thing. You can go read it for yourself. I link it in my Daily Beast piece. And it's very easy to find information on it. There's a nice full table of contents in there. They say the exact thing that JD is saying right now isn't true. And there's no like, oh, but of course that would be misleading because of blah, 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 blah. It's just like, oh yeah, this is something that might hit us with.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I was like, when you were talking to Sam Seder, I was like, oh man, he's going to love this when he brings this up because it's all like out there already. Like there's no way around some of this stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But see, this is what I was saying for debate though. JD could have hit him with the, if you actually look. Well, if you actually look at that document, no, it doesn't say that. You could just be like, oh, that guy looked. Oh my God. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, and this is like literally they took in a bunch of money, they didn't disperse any of it, right? I mean, that's as fake as you can get.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some story he can tell about why they meant to, but they just couldn't or something, although they could run that poll and whatever. But he's not doing any of that, right? He's just saying it's a lie, even though, like, you know, his own campaign said that this is a thing that happened. Yep. So this got to be. I think this might actually be Ryan's best moment so far. Although one of his worst moments happened since the last time we paused, or just one of his weirdest moments. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can shed some light on this, because what he wants to reclassify fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. What?
Yeah, I was like, oh damn, I hope Ben can hear this. Yeah, I don't know. And so one of your chatters actually had a really good point, that they were like, oh wow, the guy who gets a bunch of money from Apple wants to surveil people more. I thought that was a great little
yeah, no,
there.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, look, you know, yeah, if I
want to reclassify what would it be, like Doritos as a weapon of mass destruction, because I can't stop with the Doritos, you know what I mean? And they're like really just creating devastation on my well-being. So let's just throw everything into the weapon of mass destruction category there.
And he was saying it has to be a weapon of mass destruction because then we can get a full government response. It's like, is he going to invade somewhere? I mean, what does that mean?
That's amazing. Yeah. I don't know where. Who knows? He was also talking about rainbow fentanyl, which I've really only seen like directed at like older. I feel like that's a thing for older people who still believe that like if a cop touches fentanyl, they'll start flopping like a fish on the ground. You know what I mean? Like, so he's going pretty hard on the fentanyl stuff. I guess this is who Tim Ryan is. He's sort of he's taking up a lot of the Republican talking points here.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, my position on voting, I said this in one of the first episodes of the show, because it was during the 2020 election, is I don't know. Do you see Cabin in the Woods?
Oh yeah, I love good. You know what? People give that movie a lot of shade, but I like it.
No, I like it too. Yeah. I'm a big fan of that movie. I will probably watch it again sometime between now and Halloween. But
good Halloween movie.
Yeah, totally. So in Cabin in the Woods, where they like go into the basement in the cabin, and like they're like pouring through it, and they have to like pick the object that like what they're picking is like which monster is going to come try to kill them. Like that was my analogy for the 2020 election, that like, you know, you get to, you know, you decide, you know, which monster is going to try to kill you. It's like, okay, faced with that choice, you know, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to me to be like, oh, you just should refuse to, because like that's like unprincipled to you know. It's like, no, you should like pick whatever monster you think you and your friends have the best chance of surviving. And you know, so in that spirit, if I were an Ohio voter, I would vote for Tim Ryan. I wouldn't be happy about it, right? But I'd do it. Like I mean, look, I lived in New Jersey. I'm pretty sure I voted for some connected guys at some point, you know. But like, you know, which is to say, I voted for some New Jersey Democrats. But yeah, I think that like that's just painfully stupid. I'm going to reclassify fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction so we can get a full government response. Because, like, again, maybe there's something I'm just missing here, that this phrase weapons of mass destruction appears in some laws. There's something that can do. If that's there, it's not there. But it's like, I've heard of exactly one thing in my life that was justified by talking about weapons of mass destruction, and that one didn't go well.
Yeah, this is, I mean, maybe the obvious answer is that there's a bunch of polling about fentanyl, and people in Ohio think that it's a huge problem. So he's trying to give the most extreme rhetoric on it, maybe. But yeah, weapons of mass destruction is a weird. It's a surprise. Maybe that's it. It's just a shocking term, and he's like, oh, let me kind of use this to really like go like really extreme, like stupidly extreme with the fentanyl stuff because of the polling on it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
You know what? One other thing. Sorry, I know we're trying to say
good,
really
good.
quick. The other thing, he keeps hitting the book banning thing, that J.D. Vance is among the people who want to ban books. I looked at some poll, and like it could be the wording in the poll, but people are really not into the book banning. It's like in the teens on polls for getting books out of libraries and schools and stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting that he's hitting him with that too. So,
no, that's good. I'm glad he is. I mean, I think this is something people. I think this is something that doesn't get nearly enough play, and it should, right? Because like this is like after all the years of conservatives pretending that they give a shit about free speech, like they've been going nuts in state legislatures where they can with the book banning and stuff. So yeah, I am all for bringing that up at like every opportunity. As clunky as the way Ryan is doing it is, I'm still glad he's doing it.
Absolutely. I think if I were in a debate about it, it might be interesting to bring it up in a way of like, look, they're doing this symbolically. Like kids aren't really reading the books in the library, obviously. But guys, they're doing this as a test run to limit free speech on other stuff. You guys got to understand that. This is to dip their little toe in the water on trying to ban other stuff. Like I would do something like that, you know?
Yeah. No, I think so. And you know, and also like they have actually done, like, I mean, not this was in Ohio, but I mean, like in Oklahoma, there was a teacher, I wrote about this for Jacobin, who was essentially fired. I mean, she was placed on leave, and then some back and forth, where they laid the hammer down. She resigned, and then she's being like demonized by the state attorney general like incessantly. Even after resigning, they're trying to take away her teaching license because like literally all she did.
She put a link right to the Brooklyn Library or whatever.
Yeah, she shared with her students the QR code to where they can get like a Brooklyn Public Library card, so they can check out ebooks from the Brooklyn Public Library that are like banned in the Oklahoma schools.
I read that piece. Yeah. That's a great. That's a great piece. Everybody should go read that. I thought that was so good.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I think that is, I mean, it might be like relatively small scale in terms of current impact, but I mean, it's pretty
creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's extremely creepy. All right, let's go back to this.
Here's the problem with what Tim Ryan said. It's shameful for you to attack me, given that my family was affected by this problem. I put $80,000 of my own money into that nonprofit organization, Tim, and it absolutely did help people. Now, here's the thing. If you're in Ohio and you've seen these ridiculous commercials that Tim Ryan runs telling dishonest lies about my nonprofit organization, it's paid by pharmaceutical blood money, because the very same corporations that caused this poison to come into our country in the first place have funded your campaign to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. Why are the people who've gotten rich off the opioid epidemic funding Tim Ryan and attacking me? The answer is obvious, because this guy is the biggest fan of Pharma, and he's the biggest fan of illegal Pharma, which is the Mexican drug cartels that are bringing this poison into our country.
I just need a chance to respond to that. My record is impeccable on
clearly it's not, Tim,
pharmaceuticals and taking on big Pharma. Okay,
is that why they give you tens of thousands of dollars?
I don't vote with them. I don't vote with them.
But you do take their money.
Just a couple weeks ago, we passed a Medicare reform provision that for the first time in decades, we will be able to negotiate down drug prices. Big Pharma didn't like that. Fought it tooth and nail. I voted against them. We capped prescription drug costs in the Medicare program for seniors to $2,000. My mom falls into the donut hole. She'll pay $1,000 a month of prescription drugs. We capped it to $2,000 a year. I helped get that passed. I took on the pharmaceutical company. Insulin, we got it to $35 for Medicare recipients. I fought for that, and I got it. So time and time again, I have voted against the pharmaceutical, but this is the smoke and mirrors that our guy likes to put up here. You started a sham nonprofit. didn't do anything, and had a spokesperson who was the mouthpiece for Big Pharma.
It's time now to move on to our next topic.
I pointed out the tens of thousands of dollars that he gets.
Our next topic, the recent fatal police shootings of Jayland Walker in Akron and Donovan Lewis in Columbus sparked renewed concern and fear of law enforcement in communities of color. Many activists call for a complete overhaul of policing in America. Mr. Vance, back in 2017, you said, quote, there are legitimate concerns that a lot of Black Americans have that they're not treated fairly by some members of the police. It has been 5 years since you said that. Is that still your position today?
Well, of course, Colleen. I mean, look, I've talked to a number of police officers, and one of the interesting things I've heard from our police officers, and of course, I've been endorsed by the statewide Fraternal Order of Police because during the rioting a couple of years ago, Tim Ryan threw these guys under the bus, and I didn't. But one of the things I hear from them is that they want to do more community policing. They actually want to do more engagement, whether it's Black, white, or brown, with people in the community that they're actually trying to keep safe. The problem is it's really hard to do that when you're 25%, 30% understaffed. So we got to increase funding for law enforcement. We've got to protect law enforcement, and we've got to do something that Tim Ryan failed to do, which is stop the leadership of this country from going after qualified immunity. Here's what qualified immunity does. It provides legal protections for our police officers when they do their jobs. They need that so that they can attract the right people and so that they can focus on keeping people safe, not litigation from ridiculous activists. I think if we empower our law enforcement, look, you're always going to have bad apples. Wow. 99% of our cops are great people. If we make their job easier, we're actually going to allay the concerns of a lot of heavily policed communities. We're also going to make all of us more safe.
Congressman Ryan.
Yeah, that is this is the kind of JD Vance argument I was talking about earlier, where he comes up with just some epic feat of ad hocery, like the Medicare for all is actually elitist because it's a giveaway to doctors. Right? It's like that tier where it's like, oh well, see, I do want to help heavily policed communities because I want to keep qualified immunity. So it's if police act in abusive ways, it would be impossible to sue them.
Exactly, and fund them more. So more money and less accountability. Awesome, JD.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, you have absolutely that is the thing that it's like. He's not even doing he's not even doing the usual thing of accusing Democrats of wanting to defund the police or whatever.
Yeah.
He's literally the thing that he's accusing him of is the single reform that I think would be the hardest to seriously argue against, which is taking away qualified immunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Classic JD.
Yeah. Jesus.
Along those same lines, in many cities, police departments are struggling. Crime is going up, but the number of police officers is going down. Amid this increased scrutiny that he alluded to, officers are retiring early and police departments are having problems attracting new police officers. So what's the solution to that problem?
Well, I've tried to be a part of the solution here. We need more cops. We need better paid cops. And yeah, we got to get rid of bad cops. We need more technology and equipment. I've brought back almost $500 million for law enforcement here in Ohio. And when I get to the Senate, I will continue to do that. I was the lead advocate for putting money into the rescue package for state and local government. Governor DeWine is now going around the state passing out money for law enforcement. That's federal money. I agree that the governor should do that, and I'm glad he's doing it, but that's federal money that I helped get into that bill so that law enforcement has the resources they need, and we have to keep helping out. But I will say this, I am not going to take a back seat to JD Vance on law enforcement or anything else for that matter. The fact that on January 6th, we had 140 cops, United States Capitol Police, get injured during the insurrection when they tried to overthrow the government, beat them upside the head with lead pipes, spray them with pepper spray. The one video we saw, the cop got jammed into the door, right? JD Vance raised money for the legal defense fund of the insurrectionists. This is the kind of extremism, JD, that we wholly reject. You have video posts. Don't even try to deny it. We got your Twitter posts and everything else. Everybody's seen it. He said, Help these guys with their legal defense fund. Now, can you imagine one guy saying out of one side of his mouth he's pro-cop, and out of the other side of his mouth he's raising money for the insurrectionists who were beating up the Capitol Police? The one guy he tried to raise money for got 4 years in prison. This is ridiculous. I'm not taking a back seat to you. I brought $500 million back to fund police in Ohio.
So I've got 3 little kids, including a 2-year-old, and one of the things that's true of toddlers and is also apparently true of career politicians is that they accuse you of doing the very thing that they do themselves all the time. At the height, Tim, of the BLM riots, I've condemned political violence, whether it comes from the left or the right. But at the height of the BLM riots, where they were rioting and looting and burning down America's cities, Ohio cities and small towns, Tim Ryan threw the police under the bus. He attacked them as the new Jim Crow, as systemically racist, and he voted for legislation that would have stripped funding from them and redirected it towards litigation defense. This is another example of Tim Ryan talking about what he would like to do. Tim, you don't sound too bad. If you actually tried to do the things you talk about wanting to do, you wouldn't be half bad. The problem is you got 20 years and you failed to do any of it.
All right, thank you, candidates. We are now going to move on to our next topic.
And for that, we turn once again to Nisha Pettyhome from our next star station in Dayton, WDTN. Gentlemen, if you'll look at your monitor.
Polling has indicated Americans are increasingly concerned about threats to our democracy. We pose that question to you. What do you feel is the biggest threat to democracy right now?
And Congressman Ryan, this goes first to you.
I think it's extremism that we saw during the insurrection, and you could see that JD didn't answer it. He did raise money for the insurrectionists. He's all in with those people who are the election deniers, who call into question the most fundamental act we have, the foundation of this country. He's called into question the presidential election. That's a threat to our democracy. And running around with people who want to ban books and get the government in our bedroom and in our doctor's offices. But I tell you what I think politically is a huge threat to our democracy. And that's guys that don't have the guts to stand up to their own party. Okay. Now, I've run against Nancy Pelosi. I have taken on Bernie Sanders. I have opposed Joe Biden on numerous pieces of legislation that he wants to try to promote and push. And I've agreed with Donald Trump on trade, renegotiating NAFTA, being firmer on China, defense, General Mattis being Secretary of Defense, and all the rest. And I think the problem is when you have guys like J.D. Vance who can't stand up to anybody. Like just a few weeks ago in Youngstown, on the stage, Donald Trump said to J.D. Vance, all you do is kiss my ass to get my support. He said that. That's bad because that means J.D. Vance is going to do whatever he wants. Mitch McConnell's given him $40 million. He's going to do what he wants. And Peter Thiel gave him $15 million. He's going to do what he wants. And here's the thing that's most troubling about this lack of courage is that after Trump took J.D. Vance's dignity from him on the stage in Youngstown, J.D. Vance got back up on stage and started shaking his hand, take a picture saying, hey, aren't we having a great time here tonight? I don't know anybody I grew up with. I don't know anybody I went to high school with that would allow somebody to take their dignity like that and then get back up on stage. We need leaders who have courage to take on their own party. And I've proven that. And he was called an ass kisser by the former president.
The question is the biggest threat to democracy.
Sure.
If you would like to answer that first, and then you can respond to some of his accusations.
So I will answer the question, Colleen, because I think it's important for the voters for us to actually answer the questions. But first of all, I'm not going to take lectures on dignity and self-respect from a guy caught on video kissing up to Chuck Schumer and begging him for a promotion to his next job. That's the kind of guy that Tim Ryan is. Now, he just said, it's so funny, we're getting close to Halloween, and Tim Ryan is put on a costume where he pretends to be a reasonable moderate. But in fact, he said he stands up to his own party. The last 2 Congresses, Tim, you voted for Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden 100%. You consistently toe the party line on every single issue. I wish that you were the reasonable moderate. You said you were, because then Youngstown may have not lost 50,000 manufacturing jobs during your 20 years. On the threat to democracy, Colleen. So he just accused me of being an election denier. This is a term that Democrats throw around. Here's the thing I've said about the 2020 election, and it really implicates big tech. I think we have great elections in the state of Ohio, and I encourage everybody, even if you're going to vote for this guy, to get out there and vote by November the 8th. But here's the thing. We know because Facebook has told us that leadership of the FBI approached Facebook and told them to censor information that was negative about Joe Biden, about Hunter Biden's corrupt business dealings. You cannot have a multinational corporation that's in bed with the communist Chinese that's censoring information about one of America's political parties and doing it in a way that interferes with people's knowledge and ultimately people's votes. That's a threat to democracy. Big tech has way too much power, and it benefits the Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. We do want to follow up with you. It's come up here. You're endorsed by and you've been campaigning with former President Donald Trump. He is facing multiple criminal investigations. Is there anything the former president has done that concerns you?
I mean, is there anything he's done that's concerned me? Why don't we let the criminal investigations actually play out? Because I was alive during 2016 to 2020, and what I saw was consistently rumors that finally Donald Trump was going to be indicted, that he was going to be accused of something legitimately criminal. Of course, Tim Ryan, despite his commercials, voted to impeach him twice. I have seen nothing that would suggest the President of the United States should be thrown in prison. And most importantly here, if you're going to make accusations like this, the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, one of the most political actors in the history of American justice, if you want to go after a former president, a possible future president, or at least a future political candidate, you've got to tell the American people why. We have really corrupt leadership at the Department of Justice, and that's a problem.
Congressman Ryan, in a nationwide address, President Biden called the MAGA Republicans the threat to American democracy.
All right, so just want to pause on this for a minute. We actually had, since the last time we talked, we had Ryan's worst and best moments within like 30 seconds of each other.
Yeah.
The worst one being him bragging about his what an independent maverick he was for stopping, for standing up to the power of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna catch that one. Yeah.
And then like with that turd still fresh, he did have his best moment, which is the one that was actually the minute that I saw earlier.
Yeah.
Where he just like has this just brutal description of the interaction with Trump and be like, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to imagine any of the guys I went to high school with. And just letting somebody take their dignity like that. And that's really bad, JD.
Who would allow someone to treat them like such a little wiener like that? I'm just asking questions here, He also does a great move. You got to give it to Tim Ryan on the vibes. He goes, and he does this with his finger, this like little rap. He's like, and then JD comes back around like he's a little kid or something coming back around to Trump. Oh my God, it's so funny. So good. It's just, he's the perfect sort of, he does do that well. The sort of, the dad, the kind of pissed off dad thing who's just like totally talking this guy down.
Absolutely. No, that was really good.
And that's going to resonate, right, with a lot of people in Ohio. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, that guy is a kind of a wuss,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And yeah, I can, I feel like American political culture in 2022 is not quite there yet, but it's not very many steps away from where you could just literally just run an ad on TV, like that was like Donald Trump said, JD Vance, just kiss my ass. And then JD Vance, like a little bitch, just came back and said, yes, but I still want your support. Don't vote for the little bitch in November.
Like a mark-ass little bitch, JD Vance.
Exactly.
And it's got a picture of him like mid, how they freeze frame and he's like mid saying something, so he looks really stupid. Yeah, just do that. That's great, Like a little bitch.
Like, again, I don't think you can literally say that in a TV commercial in 2022, but I feel like maybe 2026 you could.
And then maybe you cut to a shot of Tim Ryan like in his driveway with all his friends, like Ray Liotta and Goodfellas, They're all hanging out like badass dudes, you know?
Yeah. Depicted Tim Ryan and all the guys he went to high school with.
Yes, exactly. That's it. One of them has a football, you know? One of them's just doing the like fist thing, like he's about to pound somebody, you know?
Yeah. No, exactly.
Democracy. Was he right?
Those people who stormed the Capitol are a threat to the democracy. Those people who say that the election was fraudulent are a threat to our democracy. If we lose the foundational element of this country, our vote, our elections, then we lose everything. And we got very close to that on January 6th when people wanted to kill Mike Pence and overthrow the peaceful transition. This is not some throwaway line. And that's what I want people in Ohio to understand. This is the crowd that JD is running around with. The election deniers, the extremists. That's not Ohio. That's not Rob Portman. That's not George Voinovich. That's not Sherrod Brown. Right? That's not for us. He's running with an extreme element here that's very, very dangerous.
First of all, Rob Portman endorsed me, of course, and I find it interesting how preoccupied you are with this at a time when people can't afford groceries, people can't afford to walk down the streets safely. Let's focus on the significant issues right now, Tim.
Thank you, candidates. We do have one more question on this topic before we move on. It has come up a few times here already. And this is to both of you. Do you both pledge to accept the results of this Senate election, Mr. Vance?
Of course.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
In the interest of time, and we are running tight on time, we're going to ask you a few more rapid fire questions, give you each about 20 to 30 seconds to answer so we can get some more topics in.
First question, it goes to both of you. Do you support the federal decriminalization of marijuana? Congressman Ryan.
I do. I support legalization of marijuana. I think the fact that we spend tens of billions of dollars putting people in prison for marijuana crimes is ridiculous. We should legalize it. We should tax it. We should use it to fund our schools. And we should make sure we retrain all these people who've had their lives destroyed by going to prison for a marijuana crime.
Mr. Vance?
So one, I think it should be a state's issue. States should make these decisions. Second, I don't want anybody going to prison for smoking a joint. That's not at all what I want to do. The third thing is we got to be careful here not to be soft on crime, because a lot of times you'll hear somebody thrown in prison for smoking a joint, which like I just said, I don't think that's a good idea. That's not something that we should be doing, but that's just true on paper. And if you look at the underlying charge, you'll see it wasn't just that they smoked a joint. It's that they smoked a joint and then beat an elderly woman over the head with a pistol. Those people should go to prison, and just having pled down to a so-called nonviolent drug offense, they should still be going to jail. We have to be careful about how we do this. We don't want to be soft on crime for people like that.
Mr. Van.
Amazing. Now I don't know about you. I will. Sure. I know I was just saying the thing about Vegas. I smoke a lot less than I used to. I'm like a boring middle-aged married guy, but I have a.
Me too. Yeah.
I'm trying to recall all the times that I've smoked a joint and it's made me full of energy and anger. And in spite, and like the next thing I do is what did he say? Club an old woman over the head.
Well, there is one scenario I could see that happening, right? You're in line. For me, it would be a Whataburger or something, right? You're in line and they're like, "Oh, we're out of the honey butter chicken biscuit." But like, "Oh," then somebody might get clubbed over the head. But otherwise, I don't know. I don't think so.
Also, I don't believe this is just the craziest version of this talking point.
Yeah.
Like the usual one is like, oh, people who are selling weed plead down to simple possession.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yes.
Yeah. Sure. Right. I don't, whatever. I mean, I also don't particularly think, when Biden pardoned the people for simple possession, it didn't actually let anybody out of prison, like we was talking about with Sam. And I actually don't think that somebody who sold a couple pounds of weed in 2009 should have their life ruined, by it until the end of time.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty stupid to say that they shouldn't, be able to get their records cleared. at this point, but like also, I mean, whatever. Weed dealers are annoying. They make you talk to them, but like, I don't think they deserve to have their lives ruined for that. But also, okay, I could believe, I don't know what the percentage is that it happens of time that it happens, but it's like, you want to tell me that there's like a significant percentage of people who were like convicted of simple possession that like pled down from possession with intent to distribute. That I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe that it's a frequent thing that people who violently assaulted an old woman on the street plead down to simple possession.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would get you on the assault.
Yeah, J.D. Vance is purely trying to tie this to a soft on crime thing here. He even says it at the end. So he's trying to sort of, again, redirect the entire argument into crime, which people are pretty concerned about in a lot of polls. If you poll people, and probably a lot of people in Ohio are very concerned about, quote unquote crime.
Sure.
So he's I think, I don't know what you think, but he's purely trying to redirect the argument into crime.
No, I think so. He's trying to redirect it into the kind of crime that people are actually concerned about, which is violence, even though it manifestly has nothing to do with the weed legalization issue. Like
it's
the
another
only,
it's
like
another,
the only connection between those two issues is that like violent people would be frozen out of the process by legalization.
Absolutely, exactly. It's another JD-ism of him bringing up a thing that's totally irrelevant to what we're talking about.
Yeah. And whatever. Yes, people are concerned about violent crime, and like I actually think we shouldn't be I think that I think it's a mistake for people on the left to be dismissive of that. I think it's like a major concern for plenty of working class people, and we should take it seriously. I think taking it seriously doesn't mean endorsing your enemy's solutions to it, right? Like, I think it can mean like just like emphasizing that actually fulfilling a left-wing economic program would be the most effective long-term way of reducing violent crime. But like, but it is incredibly cynical. I mean, it's like the inflation thing at the beginning, it's like, well, look, this is my script. I want to talk about inflation. I want to talk about violent crime.
Yes.
I will find a way, I will find a way, like a 2000 and, like a 2022 Simpsons writer's room, like trying to find a way from the beginning to the end of the plot, right? I will, that might be dated. I haven't actually watched in like 12 years, but whatever, 2010 at least, right? Like doing the like connect the dots thing from the setup to what the episode's going to be about.
Right.
Like I will find a way to get from point A to point B, like if it kills me, like if you, if you say we shouldn't ban books, I'll be like, yeah, well, sometimes people check out those books from the library. They club old women to death with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Vance, if your party wins the majority, who should be the Senate leader?
Like whoever runs. I don't want Chuck Schumer to be the Senate Majority Leader, that's for sure. The guy that Tim Ryan says he wants to be his boss. Presumably Mitch McConnell will run. If somebody else runs, we can have that conversation. But I know I don't want to be the Senate Majority Leader. That's Chuck Schumer.
Well, I'll go back to you, Mr. Ryan. You told me in an interview about a week ago, and you mentioned it tonight. It's time for the old guard to be gone. You mentioned Nancy Pelosi, Trump, Biden. Should Chuck Schumer be gone as well?
Well, I'm going to vote for the person who's going to give the absolute best deal to Ohio. JD's talking about a joke that I made, but the reality of it is I have been a pain in the rear end to Nancy Pelosi. And if Chuck Schumer's the leader, I will be a pain in the rear end to him too. I'm for Ohio. I don't kiss anyone's ass like him. Ohio needs an ass kicker, not an ass kisser.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Another
well-rehearsed line.
Another one for you here. Do you believe in term limits at the federal level? We'll start with Mr. Vance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had term limits. Frankly, we would get career politicians who've never had a real job out of Washington, D.C. when they fail, and they'd have to go get a real job. I think that Youngstown would.
To be clear, that would be like venture capitalist.
Exactly. Yeah. Spoken from a guy who's definitely never had a real job, J.D. Vance.
like seriously, you went to Harvard and you like worked in a law firm for a while, and you worked as a venture capitalist, and you wrote a book about how the poor just have bad culture, and then like you started a fake foundation, and then you ran for office. Like that's your entire CV.
Yeah, and he's what do you call it? Like I think Emma Vigeland called it his twin flame, Blake Masters, right? Who literally is just like, what would you call him? Like he's like the entourage of Peter Thiel. You know, he's like the turtle.
Yeah, he's like the, well, if you you know, if you remember the actual HBO show Entourage, he's like Peter Thiel's turtle.
Turtle, or maybe so then maybe JD Vance would be who would he be? He would be the
he's E.
He's E, right?
That feels right.
Oh, I can't wait till they get who's the Dylan? What was his name? Drama. Who's gonna?
I don't know who Johnny Drama is. That's a good question.
We gotta get Johnny Drama, sort of a more chaotic Peter Thiel, acolyte or whatever.
Yeah. I don't think there is one yet. I think we're gonna have to look ahead to 2024 to find out who Peter Thiel's Drama is.
Or maybe after this stream, we could email Peter Thiel and be like, "Hey, dude, we got a great idea for you. You know,
can you find somebody like a little bit more Gen X and like unstable? Because like I think that'd be like a really fun addition to the Peter Thiel universe."
Exactly.
Would be much better off if Tim Ryan had to go back to Youngstown and work in the private sector than spend all of his time in Washington, D.C.
Congressman Wright?
I think term limits are at the ballot box. I'm just going to say something to J.D. Vance. You know, my family has done nothing but serve their whole lives. That's where I learned it. My grandfather at his church, he was a lead usher at 1045 Mass, ran the beer tent. My mom helped with the church. My grandmother helped at the church. I'd play on the Our Lady of Mount Carmel playground. My grandfather'd be there painting a rectory. You know, we give back. I'm not going to apologize for spending 20 years of my adult life slogging away to try to help one of the hardest economically hit regions of Ohio and dedicated my life to help that region come back. You got to be ashamed of yourself, JD. You went off to California, you were drinking wine and eating cheese, and you said, I don't even feel comfortable in Ohio anymore.
Gentlemen, one
I'm not
question.
going to sit here and let you demean my service that I learned from my family, that when I went to Catholic school, we had to spend time going to help people. It was called senior service. I had to put on my football jersey and go serve in the community. This is an extension of that.
I admire.
Oh, that is amazing. Just the way they've both pulled versions of this move. Like Ryan's is a little bit lamer, although Vance's was like a little bit grosser because he's using his mom's personal struggle for like political points. And,
right. Yeah.
But like they've both done versions of this thing that it's like, oh, if you criticize me, you're really criticizing, my Mima and Papa, and like that's not cool, man. You can't do that.
Yeah, across the line. Hey, dude, that's across the line, man, right there.
Yeah, now when you said that I served too many terms in Congress, you're really attacking my father running the church beer tent.
Exactly. So good. I do like that he kind of got JD he went back to his sort of like treating JD like a little kid thing, where he's like, when you were off drinking wine and eating cheese, that's great, because it paints a picture in your mind of this dude just being a snob. So we'll point to Tim Ryan on that one.
Yeah.
I admire the spirit
Vance.
of service.
No,
what
you
I don't admire is the failure of accomplishment. Look at how Youngstown has done during your leadership. That's what I don't admire.
Gentlemen, we are just about out of time. We want to get to your closing statement, so we thank you both very much.
We are going to give each of you 1 minute here for your closing statements. As agreed, we are going to start with Congressman Ryan. You have 60 seconds.
America's a great place, right? This country has fed more people, clothed more people, cured more people, and liberated more people than all the other countries in the world combined. And
I'm going to have to stop for a fact check on that. Do we have a ruling about whether that's true?
Yeah, we need to get the fact checkers on that. We need to get the fact checkers on that one.
Like all the other countries combined?
Combined.
Really?
Yeah, combined also. Wow.
Wow.
Big claim by Tim Ryan there. Wow.
Like all the countries ever combined? Like are we going back to like you know, like look, I've checked the record of how many people were fed in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and you know.
I think he might be even talking about like fictional, like the Game of Thrones world as well, which is wow. He crunched those numbers. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, Westeros, you know, like nothing, none of them have fed nearly as many people as the United States.
Does I would like to ask him, does that include dragons? I mean, I need to see the breakdown on this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm not. I think there's a big question mark over that claim that the United States has done all those things more than any other country.
I mean,
sorry, not any other country. Every other country combined.
Combined, yeah. I think what we're supposed to take from that is I love America so much. America's so amazing. Okay, we get it, Tim. We get it.
No, my opponent here is capable of watching bald eagles fly across the sunset without crying. I'm not.
JD Vance kicked a bald eagle, in fact, once, and he peed on it, and he smiled while he was doing that. They should just start saying stuff like that. That would make debates so much fun. They were just like, yeah, my opponent here, he took an American flag and he peed on it. What do you think? What do you guys think of that? And he's like scrambling to deny it. You know, it'd be so funny. I know you as an actual debate, you know, teacher, like really appreciate that kind of sentiment. Just ruining a debate right off the bat.
Yeah. I mean, do try to do a better version of it than that, but like they're already kind of doing that anyway, so like they might as well go for it.
Yeah, we're just under the surface with it.
Yeah.
We have to rebuild the great American middle class. Ohio has always led the way. We've got great things happening in Ohio, but I met a woman in Marietta who was a single mom who had to travel 2 hours to work and 2 hours back. That's who I'm fighting for. That's why we went all in on electric vehicles, where we now have 4 vehicles in the old General Motors Lordstown plant. We're manufacturing the jobs of the future. Solar panels in Toledo, natural gas in the Southeast, the chips manufacturing plant is going to be a blockbuster. Average wage $135,000 a year. Battery plant in the Mahoning Valley. Look, we have an opportunity to be the manufacturing powerhouse of the world, the arsenal of energy. I will never forget where I came from. And if you want to help this campaign, go to timforoh.com, chip in, volunteer. We're going to build a movement of the exhausted majority, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, to move this state into the future.
And your final statement, Mr. Vance.
Look, 20 years ago, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. That very same year, Tim Ryan went to Washington, D.C., where he has been failing at his basic job for 20 years. Talks a big game, but the record of accomplishment just isn't there. I think there's something very basic here. I think that people deserve certain things. Ohioans deserve certain things from their federal leadership. They deserve to go to the grocery store and be able to afford food without it breaking the bank. They deserve streets that you can walk down safely. They deserve a country that has a border. I promise. We may not always agree on everything, but I'll never forget where I came from, and I'll never stop fighting to achieve those things for the people who deserve them. This is such an important election. I'd encourage people to go to jdvance.com and support me. But at the end of the day, the question here is whether we need new leadership in this state. Double down on the last 2 years of failed leadership, or take this country in a different direction. I thank you all for listening. I thank you for watching, and I hope to earn your vote. God bless you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. And that concludes tonight's Ohio United States Senate debate.
Thank you once again to both candidates for participating, and thank you for joining us across the state of Ohio.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah, that was something.
That was really something. And they're in a dead heat right now. Polls. So that kind of makes sense. If I watch that debate and
Sure.
I didn't know too much, I'd be like, okay, it's about even.
No, it sounds like these people all suck.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a fair, like, sort of immediate visceral takeaway.
Yeah.
From what we just watched. It's like, no, they both sound awful.
Not great, not great. Maybe you can answer this. Isn't Tim Ryan like a little bit more of a pro-union guy, though? Don't you kind of have to be in Ohio, like if
Yeah,
you're a
I was going to
Democrat?
say I wouldn't be surprised if he was, just
Yeah.
because he's a congressman in Ohio, and like
Right.
it'd be pretty hard not to be.
Yeah.
But you know, so yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure if nothing else, like he's at the very least, I'm sure he's like enough of like a, despite what he said about the pain in the rear end and all that stuff, like I'm sure he's at least enough of a hacking machine Democrat that he'll like, you know, he'll vote in party line stuff, he'll vote for nominees, you know, all that stuff. And so
Yeah.
like his overall impact on the Senate, you know, will be like mediocre, but
Mhm.
like but better than Senator Vance's would be, since he doesn't want to you know, he doesn't you know, he doesn't want to ban abortion, and he doesn't you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all that stuff, right? Like all the stuff that came up tonight. Like I think that like really the only places where Vance sounded better than Ryan were you know, de-escalation with Russia, which is also, you know, it's very unlikely that either of them is going to be in a position to do much. I mean, I guess maybe if there's a, you know, I mean, if there was an actual treaty, which right now feels super unlikely, like I think like the best case scenario anytime soon is probably some sort of like weird long-term ceasefire. But if you know, especially with like the annexations, it's really hard to imagine a treaty right now. But like,
Yeah.
if there was, I guess maybe they'd like be able to vote up or down on it. But I also feel like if there was, Biden would have negotiated it, and like Ryan would probably support it anyway.
Mhm.
But like, you know, that like that's one of the issues. And then the other one is that like Vance was like vaguely critical of big tech in ways that obviously Ryan wasn't.
Mhm.
It's a little rich coming from a guy who's like entirely funded by somebody who's got most of his money from Facebook, but
Yep.
whatever.
Yep. Yep.
You know, it's a nice sentiment, but also it's like I also don't know what Vance is actually going to do.
You know what's funny though too is that a lot of right-wing content creators are really pissed off at PayPal specifically right now, because I haven't even really looked into it, but they're talking about how there's something, it's probably blown out of proportion, but they're doing fines for misinformation or something through PayPal. So at least that's the information, probably misinformation that right-wing content creators are spreading. So it's going to be a little bit hard with the Peter Thiel guys.
I mean, look, I would not be like, if you want to tell me that PayPal is involved in sort of corporate censorship, like that's extremely plausible.
Yeah.
Although also, again, that's literally where, you know, Facebook was his best investment, but I mean,
Yeah.
like that's literally the origin of all the Thiel money is PayPal.
Right. Yeah.
But so that would be pretty funny if, you know, whatever. But like, but yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, big tech is awful and they do awful things, and, you know, surveillance and censorship and all that stuff, right? But it's like also like I want to know what the JD Vance solution is.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I will say, me as an Ohio voter, having watched that, I'm not voting for no little bitch ass candidate who just walks around. Yes, sir. You know, no, we're badass men around here. And, you know, we eat giant hoagies and all that shit. And JD Vance does not seem like my man on that one.
Yeah. No, none of the guys who went to high school with Tim Ryan are down with that.
They would absolutely like pants him or whatever they do, whatever Ohio high school guys do. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that makes JD Vance slightly more likable, that he's getting bullied by Tim Ryan's horrible bully high school friends. But, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, maybe slightly, you know, maybe it might make me slightly pro bullying, but it's like, I remember when I heard the thing about, was it that in high school, at their high school, that Immortal Technique bullied Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Oh my God,
And I have to say, when I heard that, my immediate visceral response was like, all right, I'm now prepared to build both sides school bullying.
I mean, it's a case by case thing.
Yeah. You can't make sweeping statements about this.
Right.
It's like, how much did the kids suck?
Oh boy. Coming from a teacher, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Ben Burgis exposed.
Yeah.
But
Enthusiastically pro bullying. Yeah. No, sure, you shouldn't do that.
Don't do it.
All of the children who watch this YouTube channel who are prepared to become school bullies because they just saw this, it's parody.
Yes.
But,
again, unless the kid sucks.
Unless they really suck, in which case, you do what you got to do.
I gotta say, when Lin-Manuel put that picture of him, but the biting the lip, the famous sexy biting the lip thing, my bully instinct came out. I had to be like, stop it, The thing about that is just your inner bully, arises or whatever,
Yeah, it's like, what's the Cornell West line about Donald Trump? He's a gangster, and I've got gangster in me. We all have gangster in us.
Yes. Oh my God.
We all have school bully in us. It's not good, but it is what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which did you ever listen to that, by the way, that when to connect dots from earlier in the conversation, it was after Michael died. There was like the episodes they were doing when they were keeping TMBS up. It was like a memorial thing. The Zizek Cornell West episode.
I feel like I have seen it. I can't recall anything from it though.
Yeah, it's a treat. Like it's really funny because like Russ Sabriglia is moderating it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like those two guys. So as you can imagine, Russ says like 3 sentences in an hour.
Oh my God, it's hard to get a word in edgewise with just Zizek.
Yeah, exactly. You sort of, you cue him up, but you shouldn't be under any illusions that you'll be allowed to steer.
I'm going to just bulldoze this crap right now. I'm going to just roll right over you when you try to talk. Yeah. I actually like the Red Scare interview with him because he's just literally does not let them talk the whole time. It's one of the best.
I haven't heard that one, but that actually sounds fun. I might see if I can track that down now.
These poor girls just trying to get a foot in the door to talk, and they just cannot do it. It's great.
Yeah, no, that might be the no comment. The best, most reassuring thing I saw in the chat is that somebody, the point that somebody made here, got to give Jem credit for this. If there's a nuclear war, no one is asking Tim Ryan's opinion on what to do.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, all right. They did the tactical nuclear strike. We're at DEFCON 1. DEFCON is the Kanye thing. DEFCON is what it actually is. We're at DEFCON 1. We've got to make a decision, right? Do we push the button? Okay, whose opinion do we really want right now? Can we get Tim Ryan or possibly the guys he went to high school with?
That's what I was gonna say. That would be his answer. We need to go get whatever Trey and whatever these guys' names would be, Jimbo. Hey, we're gonna go pants Vladimir Putin. We're gonna hang him up by the basketball rim or whatever. Hey, we can't make it. We're too busy catcalling women. Maybe next time. And then just that's the last thing we hear.
Yeah. No, I like to imagine myself doing the thing that makes me feel most fulfilled as a person, and that would I'd be happiest to have spent the most of my life doing, and which is like responding to somebody on Twitter as like the it's like thinking about like the tweet and typing it up as like we start off the Dr. Strangelove sequence, we'll meet again. I don't know where or when.
Or you're on the missile with the cowboy hat, but you're tweeting.
Yeah, I got the phone out.
You're at Michael Tracy.
That's who would be an argument with too. Would be Michael Tracy. It's like, but I really owned him in the last minutes.
Just before the missile lands, you own his ass so bad,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I should say that if you're enjoying this premium primo Brown Burgis content, there will be more of it coming up very soon. So I am going to, speaking of Peter Thiel, I am going to be debating Curtis Yarvin in about a little less than a week and a half, like a week and a couple days. So before that happens, I was going to go on the RM Brown channel to talk a little Curtis. So I think we're probably recording that on Saturday sometime.
Yep. Whenever I'm free all weekend, so whenever is good for you.
All right, cool. Yeah, so can look forward to that. And if you want to have done at least one fun thing, possibly even more fun than beefing with journalists on Twitter, and before the big one goes off, that tickets to that LA live show, the link is in the description.
What's the date again on that? Sorry, what's the date?
Oh, yeah. Good call. The date is October 23rd. So that would be a week from Sunday, October 23rd, at 7 p.m. LA time at the Terragram Ballroom. There's you can see the little graphic that Andy put together for that. There's actually another graphic coming soon. I've seen the drawings; they're good. So should be a very good time. Really looking forward to that. It's going to be a good. It's going to be a good, it'll be that whiplash transition, because I'll actually be in Chicago debating Yarvin on Saturday the 22nd, and then I'm getting on a flight that night to LA, so I can participate in the live show on Sunday night, the 23rd. Should be a good time, and I think I'll need it after that. So looking forward to that.
That's a packed live show. Anybody who doesn't go to that is crazy.
Yeah. Yes, I concur. So, where can people check you out?
Just on my YouTube channel, RM Brown, or you can. I'm on Twitter more lately too, which is RM Brown X2. That's it.
All right.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Well,
excited to talk to you soon.
Yeah, I will talk to you. Yep, we will have some good Yarvin conversation over the weekend. People should check that out. Look forward to seeing some of you in person in a little over a week. Left is best.